So welcome back guys, today we are going to see, what if Bella saved an original vampire? Part 2, so let's get started. I controlled my breathing and thought positive thoughts. It could be anything, really, I told myself, but nothing worked. After what seemed like hours, I slowly got out of bed and walked to the window. Before I had even gotten a chance to say, what it was a familiar voice yelled my name, causing me to squeal a little. Bella, open the window, Jake yelled, quietly as he could. I didn't realize how tense I was until I felt my body relax and sighed with relief. I pushed up the window and stood back a little as Jake threw himself in. An old memory from what felt like years ago ran through my mind, reminding me of the first time he had one that to help me realize what he had become. We have to go, he said, interrupting my thoughts. What, now? What happened? I shook my head trying to understand what was going on. Nothing seemed fit due to my head still being hazy from the dream. Well, Leah caught another scent. It was fresh and it was heading this way. He paused for a moment, probably waiting for my reaction, but I didn't know how to react. First thought was to freak out, like normal, but a rush of adrenaline pumped through me and I was ready to end this damn thing. Okay, let's go, I said, and I kicked off my shoes and started walking for my bedroom door. When are you ever going to just learn to jump out the window? Jake laughed. Not right now, I lightly laughed. Maybe someday. Once I heard Jake leap out the window, I turned and walked the rest of the way to my door. My heart skidded to a stop when I opened it to Charlie standing there with his arms folded across his chest. And what do you think you are doing? He asked, eyes narrowed. I'm going to get some water, I lied, horribly. Yeah sure, and why don't I believe that? He asked, reaching out to push the door open the rest of the way. Where'd he go? Who? Jake. And don't you play dumb with me. I know I heard him in here, he argued. I think Bella, think. What is going on Bella, and I don't want to hear any more lies. Damn it, I was out of options. I had no idea what to do. I could continue to lie, but how many lies would I use before it was really too many? I honestly couldn't take it anymore. I remembered my vow, GHTS from the dream, and I hoped that he could someday deal with this as I had imagined. Without a second thought, knowing serious things were going on and I needed to leave, I caved. Dad, you're right, something is going on, something huge, but I can't tell you. I don't even think you would understand if I did. Can you just accept that you're right, that something is going on and that I have been lying, even if just for right now? Tears were forming in my eyes and I blinked them away. I was not ready for what was coming. Bella, what are you talking about? What happened? He looked confused and I couldn't blame him. Something had happened to me. Well, something has changed. In some ways, I'm not the same anymore. Come here, I said as I pulled him downstairs with me. I made him sit down on the couch while I paced back and forth trying to sort it all through and explain it to him. Finally, I got an idea. It wasn't the greatest, but it was all I had. I could show you what I'm talking about, but you'll freak out. I have secrets that involve other people, as well as myself. In order to protect them, I can't tell you everything, but I can show you what I am. I'm just not sure if I can tell you why yet, and I'm not sure if you can handle it. It's too dangerous. I really hoped he wouldn't want me to show him and that he would just take my word for it. I couldn't tell what he was thinking. But he was deep in thought about something. He took a deep breath. Show me, he finally said. I closed my eyes. Are you sure? Dad, this is serious. You have to promise me you won't do anything stupid. What am I going to do, Bells? You tell me you've changed, that you can't really explain, but you can show me. To tell you the truth, I'm a little scared to know, but you're my daughter. I have the right to know what is going on with you, and I will find a way to deal with whatever it is. Once I opened my eyes, I could tell he was being honest. I couldn't believe what I was about to do and the tears started spilling again. Charlie stood up and started to say something, but I shook my head while raising my hand for him to stay where he was. He sat back down as I turned to walk toward the hallway where I would have more room. I knew Jake was outside still and I was pretty sure he could hear everything that was going on. I was almost sure that if he disagreed with this, he would have been in here to stop me. I took that as a positive thing, but it was only one with so many negatives. Please don't be scared, I whispered one more time as I closed my eyes and phased. All at on. I heard a gasp come from Charlie and the front door flew open. Both Jake and Charlie stood there wide-eyed, staring at me. I heard a rush of voices coming in my head from the pack, all wondering what I was doing. I had too, I said, and Sam told the guys to be quiet. What the? Charlie mumbled. Charlie, she's Jake tried to say, but was cut off by Charlie. You did this to her, didn't you? I couldn't understand how Charlie had gotten that idea, but I'm sure that Jake coming in at the same time didn't help it any. It's not what you think, Jake tried to explain. I dropped my head down, looking at the floor. I didn't know what to do. There I was, standing in the middle of my hallway as a wolf while Charlie was in the living room with Jake, blaming him. I didn't plan that far ahead. And I sure as hell wasn't planning on Jake being there. Jake looked at me as I lifted my head. I pointed my head in the direction of the living room, hoping he would go in farther so I could phase back, and he did. I heard him try to talk to Charlie some more, but I was too focused on phasing back to understand. I'll be right back, I told the pack. Hurry, Sam said. I phased back and I could hear the talking quiet down after I had changed. Bella, Charlie called. Stay right there, I yelled as I ran upstairs for new clothes. I was going to have to shopping by the end of the week if I kept hat up, and I shook my head at the thought. Once I was fully clothed again, I went back down to try and talk to Charlie about what he had just seen. It wasn't going to be easy, but when I had gotten into the room, I could see he looked a little better. I explained most of it, Jake said. You didn't have to, I said, wondering what most of it had meant. Yeah, I did, so that's what you are now. That's what all the secrets have been about, all that sneaking around and sneaking out. Yeah, I knew, Bella. I just didn't say anything. That explains the eating and growing too, he asked, and I nodded. Well then, I guess that sums up just about everything. My daughter's a werewolf, he laughed, but I couldn't tell if he thought it was really funny, or if he thought he was going crazy. I will explain it more to you later, Charlie. But right now we have to go deal with something, Jake told him. Right. More of that stuff I don't want to know, Charlie said, nodding. I just stood there staring at him, completely unsure about what to do. He glanced up at me, smiling as he stood up and walked over to give me a hug. I love you, Bells, no matter what. But that's enough for now, okay? I don't need to know the hows or the whys, at least not right now. Just like I don't want to hear about what is you are doing that you said was dangerous. I hate that you have to do something that is dangerous and that I can't help you. But I guess there are just some things a sheriff can't handle. He laughed again. You're taking this a lot better than I had thought, I said quietly, laughing with him. I understood why he didn't want to know, and I was glad I didn't have to explain it. I was also happy that I didn't end up giving him a heart attack and that he seems to accept it. I really needed to start giving him more credit. We have to go, Jake said again. Just be sure to come home safe, he told me. I will, I said as I walked out the door. Once we got out the door and took the first step into the woods, Jake grabbed my arm and pulled me in front of him. What were you thinking? He asked. I had to, Jake. He knew you were there. He knew everything and I couldn't lie to him again. You should have told me. I didn't even know I was going to until I saw him in my doorway. If I was planning it, you would have known. I'm sorry you're mad, but I had to do it, Jake, I told him as a single tear slid down my cheek. All right, I'm not mad, he said, catching the tear with his thumb. We just have to be careful and well, hopefully now you won't have to sneak out anymore, he laughed. Yeah, hopefully, I agreed, rolling my eyes. Okay, let's go. We walked in separate directions, a few feet away from each other to phase. I still wasn't comfortable just doing it in front of anyone. As soon as I phase, I got a head full of pissed off voices yelling at me for what I had just done. Sam had to tell them all to shut up again while I explained it to them the same way I did to Jake. Sam understood and we moved on to the more important things. So, I assume Jake has told you what happened, Sam said. Part of it, a new scent closer to my house. Did you find whoever it was? I asked in a rush. No, they left again before we could catch them, or see them. So whoever it is still out there. Yes, for now. We will catch them, Bella. Right now it appears to only be 2, but we are expecting more. Only 2 doesn't seem right. If it was the Volturi, no, it wasn't right. They wouldn't only have 2 members come. Now I was confused and trying hard to figure out who it could be. The only threat I had left was the Volturi. James was dead, Laurent was dead, Victoria and her newborns were dead. It could only be the Volturi. But why like this? We will find them, Sam and Jake saw it at the same time with a tone that sounded so definite that it sent chills through my spine. At that moment a crunching sound in the distance broke through and interrupted the conversation. We all hipped our bodies around to face the sound, growling at the possible threat, but my body relaxed when I realized it was a scent I recognized. It's Edward, I told them, and they calmed a little, but still always tense in the presence of a vampire. I sighed. I'll go talk to him, I said. No, I will, Sam interrupted. I was a bit surprised by it, but nodded and took a couple steps back to Jake and sat down. We all scattered out a bit, still searching for new scents, but I stayed closer to where Sam and Edward were so I could listen. So she has seen. Wait, is Bella out there too? He asked suddenly, and I was shocked and confused. Yes. What does that matter? Sam snapped. It's just that, well, I can't hear anything, Edward said, sounding very confused. And what's that supposed to mean? Sam asked impatiently. I don't know. I moved closer, hoping I could get close enough to see without being heard. Through a break in the branch, still a few feet away, I was able to see clearly. I can't hear your thoughts, Edward said quietly, shaking his head. And that's a bad thing. How? Can we get to the point and not discuss your personal problems? Sam's impatience was clearly showing as he folding his arms across his chest. It's not just I wonder, Bella. Can you hear me? Edward asked a little bit louder. I took a few steps closer to them and he turned his head towards me. Bella, can you phase out? He asked, and I was completely confused. What is he doing? Jake asked. I'm not sure. I'll find out, I said as I stepped backwards, back to where I was when I was still hidden. I phased back once I realized none of the pack members were close enough to see. What is it, Edward? I asked. Wow, he whispered. What is going on? Sam growled. Bella, can you? For once Edward was at a loss for words. I had no idea what to do, or what to think. I just stood there far enough away from them, uncomfortably naked, waiting for him to finally say something. I can hear them all now, Edward said finally in a whisper. Okay, what's that supposed to mean? I asked. When you were with them, phased, I couldn't, but now that you are standing here I can. I still didn't get it. What does that mean? I asked again. I think it means, you can block them, like you block me from inside your head. When you are with them, I cannot access their minds. I stood there thinking about that for a minute. Could I really be able to block the pack's thoughts from Edward? What if that meant? Does that mean I can block them from others too? Like the Volturi? It may, he answered, sounding deep in thought. What does that mean? Sam asked. While Sam was trying to sort things through, I did the same, but decided to put my clothes on first. After I was dressed, I walked forward a little so they could see me. She may be able to block you all from the Volturi's powers, Edward said as he looked toward me with a slight smile. Sam didn't say anything, and neither did I as I stared at my feet. Sam just stood there staring off into the trees. If I could block the Volturi, then maybe there was a good chance this could go well. Depending on who all is here. I turned and looked at Edward, who was looking at me with hope in his eyes. I took a step towards him and the sound of crunching branches from behind stopped me. I turned to see Jacob looking confused and slightly irritated. I could only assume it was because he had no idea what was going on. What's going on? Jake asked. I guess Bella may be able to block us from the Volturi too, Sam said. What? How did you get that idea? From him, Sam said as he pointed a thumb at Edward. I can't read your minds when Bella is phased with you. My only thought on that is that she might be able to block the Volturi if she can block me. I admit it's a far shot. But it's something, Edward said as he turned to walk away. Well, what about the Volturi? I asked. Oh, right, Alice has seen them coming, but not the way we had thought. Keys is missing, Edward saw it and I couldn't read the emotion in his eyes. I froze, then a sudden shiver ran through my bones. Hearing that so soon after the dream I had didn't sit well with me. Ndered if somehow my mind was telling me that the person I smelt in the trees was in fact Keys. My knees started to feel weak as Jake put an arm around me before I had the chance to fall. "What is it, Bells?" "Nothing," I said as I shook my head and forced a smile. "I'm fine." "Are you sure?" "Yes." "So is that all?" Sam asked Edward. "Yes, that is all. For now." "All right, we'll be in contact then." "Yes." Edward nodded and disappeared, but not before I saw him glance back at me. He didn't have the hope I saw before, but worry. I looked up at Jake, who was concentrating on something. I glanced over at Sam, who had the same look on his face. I didn't have to be phased in to know they were already thinking of a plan to get everyone out of this in one piece. I started to do the same. We stood there in silence for a little longer as we continued to think. I couldn't come up with anything except just making sure I was doing my blocking thing, though I'm not really sure how it worked against others. Maybe I don't even have to try. I may have to test that out with Edward before it's too late. I still couldn't believe that my brain had the ability to do such a thing. I don't know how anything still surprised me. After I was deep in thought, I could feel Sam and Jacob's eyes on me. It wasn't until Jake said my name that I snapped out of it and focused on them again. "Bells," Jake whispered. "What?" I said, snapping my head in his direction. "Are you sure you're okay?" "Yes, I'm sure." I didn't know if it was a lie or not. I felt okay, but the weight of the news I had just gotten was quickly becoming heavier than I had thought. "All right, let's get going. We still have to explain and discuss all of this with the rest of the pack," Sam said as he disappeared into the trees. Jake and I slowly followed. He turned to me to give me a gentle, but eager hug. "I love you, Bells. I know everything will be okay," he whispered. I just nodded as he released me and slightly smiled. He held my hand as I slowly walked away from him to phase again. Once the pack heard what was going on and what I was able to do, they had a hard time believing it. Some of them didn't want to believe that the Nooch Omer had the ability to protect them all, but Sam had an idea that maybe that was why I was changed in the first place. I had to agree with him. It really made more sense of it all. I was completely exhausted by everything that had happened and couldn't concentrate on anything. Sam told me to go ahead and go home to sleep, but I knew that was the last thing I would be doing. I had too much on my mind. But I gave in and decided home may be the best place for me to be. "I'll go with you," Jake said as I was about to phase out. "Jake, we need you to stay a bit longer," Sam said before I could say anything. "Are you sure?" "I don't think she should be alone right now," Jake argued. "Yes, I'm sure. She has a lot going on right now, and I also think it would be best for her to see Charlie alone too. We'll be close enough by her though. Just in case." Jake sighed. "I'm fine, Jake. I'm just going to walk home, clear my head and try to get some sleep. I'll come over when I wake," I said. "All right, well, let me know if anything else comes up or happens. We will, and someone will be outside your house just as normal," Sam said. I nodded to Sam just before I phased out. The cool air felt good, so I decided to walk home in human form instead of running as a wolf. Once I started walking, a quick reminder of Charlie popped into my head. I wasn't ready to deal with him yet, and I didn't think he would be ready to see me yet either. Just finding out your daughter is a werewolf is a pretty big thing to take in. Considering he handled it pretty well, I thought maybe I should give him a little more time alone with it. I didn't know where else to go, or what else to do, but a thought of Edward popped into my head and I decided to try and get more information about what it was I was supposed to do. I changed directions, and once I was halfway there I suddenly heard the steps of someone following me. I stopped for a moment to listen better, but just as I did they came up fast behind me and I couldn't hold the squeal. "Bells, it's me," Jake said as he reached out to me. "Oh, sorry, you scared me." "Don't apologize, I should have said something." "What are you doing out here?" Jake asked curiously. Decide that maybe Charlie wouldn't be so ready to see me yet, and I thought maybe I should see if the Cullens had any more information for me about this brain thing. Or the Volturi. "I'm sure you will know when it's time. You figure it out yourself so far," he said, looking around like he was expecting something. You just don't want me to be with them alone still, I told him. Of course I don't, Bells. You can't expect me to just suddenly trust them because they seem to be helping us. It's harder than you think, and I think you maybe be starting to understand that. I nodded. But it's not that. I just get worried when you're alone. Especially not phased in with us. I can't tell if something is wrong or not, but I feel like something is. I'll be fine. Okay. Trust me, I said as I kissed him softly on the cheek. But just as I did, my stomach knotted up. I ignored it. Okay. If it would make you feel better to talk to him about it, then I'm not going to stop you. I do trust you. Just promise me you will be careful. We can't take any chances right now, and I don't know what I would do if I lost you. He leaned forward and kissed my forehead, slowly drifting down to my lips. I almost gave in right there, but I didn't. You are not going to lose me, Jacob. I'm not going anywhere, I whispered and kissed him one more time on the lips before I pulled away. I will go home soon, I promised as I walked away. The motion felt slow and I felt an odd twinge of pain in my stomach as he faded in the distance. A moment later a cold breeze washed over me, startling me. It was truly odd, but I ignored it and continued walking. I enjoyed walking long distances in my human form. It was a nice change from what had become the odd, but normal four-legged run to get around. I closed my eyes and just opened my ears to the welcome silence. Somehow, I had gotten too caught up in the walk to their house that I managed to wander off in the wrong direction. I found myself standing in the middle of a meadow. Judging by the distance that I had walked and from where I was with Jake, I knew it had to be that one meadow that had once meant so much to me. I stood there for a moment trying not to get lost in old memories and decided it was getting too late to continue to stand there. Once I figured out the right direction, I started walking again. I hoped I wouldn't lose too much time, but the closer I got, the more things seemed strange. I suddenly felt like I wasn't alone anymore. I focused more closely on the silence and I realized it wasn't so silent anymore. I froze completely still waiting for a sound, but continued to hear nothing. I started to panic and my breathing got heavy, but before I let myself get too out of control I thought for a moment and felt a little crazy for not considering Jake. Can't take my word on it, huh? I laughed as I turned, waiting for Jake to pop out from either direction, but nothing happened. Jake, is that you? I yelled, but all I heard in return was the echo of my own voice. Come on, don't play games. I was starting to get worried that it possibly wasn't Jake at all. The panic started to fill my voice the more I called out. Jake, someone, anyone. I got nothing in return. I knew someone was there and I knew whoever it was getting closer. It was completely dark out. No moon and no stars, just pitch black. I knew when I was out to crash into something or when something was near me, but from what I could tell there was only the trees. Once I had finally convinced myself that maybe I was just being crazy, the sound of a branch cracked loudly behind me and I was afraid to turn around. A gust of wind blew and I caught the scent of the one thing I truly feared. I knew it had to be him or someone sent by him. They were the only vampire scents in the area that I wasn't familiar with. They would be the only ones that would be out in the middle of nowhere with me and not say a word. My breathing stopped as chills ran through my spine. Just as I was about to take a step forward and try to run and phase, a freezing cold hand grabbed my shoulder. I jumped away from them only to slam right into something hard and just as cold. In that moment I knew I was surrounded. I turned to my right and tried to make a circle, hoping to see anything, even if it was to confirm my fears, but just as I did, I was hit in the head with something hard, causing me stagger back a little. I shoved whatever was in front of me out of the way and tried to run as fast as I could away from whoever was behind me. I only got a few feet away, before one of the vampires quickly caught up with me, slamming right into me, and I flew into a tree, taking it down with me. I shoved back into them, once again tried to phase, but it was too late. Something sharp hit me in the back of the head once again, but this time everything quickly went dark. I heard a voice muffled by the fogginess, but just as quickly as it disappeared, I was out. I was standing out in the middle of the meadow. The sun was shining the brightest I've seen it since I was in Phoenix. The breeze blew my hair lightly across my face. I closed my eyes, enjoying the warmth of the sun on my skin, smiling. In one quick moment, it all disappeared. The warmth turned into a violent wind. As my body shivered in alarm, I heard a familiar voice calling out my name in panic. My knees hit the ground and eyes flew open as I gasped for a breath to respond. I wasn't in the meadow anymore. I blinked my eyes slowly to adjust to the darkness of the room. My head ached a little, but I could tell it wasn't much longer before it was healed. I barely remembered what had really happened, but the harder I thought about it, the more my head ached. I was lying down on a cold brick floor. I tried to sit up, but I couldn't separate my hands. After a minute of struggling, I realized they were chained together and my legs were chained to the ground. My eyes had started to adjust to the darkness of the room and I realized there were no windows and only one door. My only assumption was that I was in a basement of some kind. "Hello," I shouted, hoping someone would answer. I tried wiggling more, but it wouldn't work. I thought that maybe phasing would work or at least help get the chains off. My head was still a bit foggy and that must have been interfering with phasing. I wasn't able to. I had never heard of anything stopping a werewolf from phasing, but then again I still had a lot to learn. I couldn't focus enough on one thing long enough to figure anything out. I mostly just wanted to know where I was and why I was there. I started to focus harder on phasing just like I had my second time, but at the same time the door opened. A short vampire with glossy black hair in a ponytail walked in. I was sitting in the corner farthest away from the door. The farthest I had gotten was up on my knees. "Awake finally?" he asked with a laugh. "What the hell is going on?" I growled at him. "Ah, you are mad." He laughed again, sarcastically. "We'll have time for questions later. Right now someone would like very much to see you. I suppose you're not going to tell me who that is either?" I asked angrily. "Be patient." He walked up closer to me and quickly undid the chains. He grabbed me by the arm and jerked me upwards, making me a little dizzy, while pulling me out of the room. He stopped for a moment, slamming the door behind us, and quickly led me down a long hallway that was a little brighter than the room I had been in and a little colder. Once we had finally reached the end, he opened a thick metal door and pushed me through, slamming the door as he followed. We were in another hallway, but only walked halfway down before we reached another thick metal door. He knocked 3 times on it before he stood back a few inches. "Wah!" I started to ask another question, but the door flew open so fast it created a gust of air that just about knocked me over, interrupting me. "Come in, Bella," a deep voice called from in the room. Something deep inside me recognized the voice, sending tremors through my spine. "I have been waiting for this," he said, with such enjoyment and that deep sadistic smile pulling into place. Just as it had in my dream. "Keys," I said, with disgust. "So, I see you are still not a vampire. Going back on promises now, are we? Remember, I don't offer second chances." I didn't say anything, though, I admit, there is something very off about you since the last time I have seen you. "Yes, I'd say there is." I wasn't quite ready to tell him about my other change just yet, since he didn't seem to know. "Care to tell me?" he asked calmly. "No, not really," I said. I see. Why didn't you inform Arrow of your little trip?" "Arrow doesn't always have to know everything, you know," he said with a smile. Sure. Any other questions?" "Why did you do it this way?" I knew the others would disagree with me and I grew tired of waiting. I gathered enough guards to help me and left while they were distracted. He added a little laugh once he was finished. I didn't want to know what he had meant by distracted. "So you're here to kill me? You broke the rules, you and those Cullens, but your punishment is enough for me. Though, I still haven't exactly decided how exactly I will be doing that." The last time I had seen Keys the First couldn't really picture him as the happy type, but now that he was thinking of my punishment, something tortuous, I'm sure, it wasn't a pretty sight. I couldn't decide what to do. I ran over my options, nothing ended very well. The only option that seemed even close to working was phasing, but I wasn't sure about that yet. "You are awfully quiet, Bella," he said, causing me to lose track of thought. "What would you like me to do? Cry and beg for forgiveness or a second chance? Does that really seem like something I would be doing right now?" The words just jumped out of my mouth. Well, your little boyfriend isn't able to protect you this time, he said, adding to his smile. None of them are. So, what are you going to do? Just as I opened my mouth to speak, though I wasn't really sure I knew what I was going to say, the door on the other side of the room opened and two vampires came in. I could only place them as his guards, judging by their look. One of them was a lot taller, but the shortest one looked stronger. Both were slightly odd-looking. I just froze, hoping they weren't coming in for me. Keys, the tallest one said as he slowly bowed his head. Please tell me you have some good news for me. Keys turned towards me. Oh Bella, I forgot to tell you, he said with a smile. I wasn't sure where you would have been before, so I had guards go to both your house and the Cullens. One way or another I was going to get to you. My breathing stopped and the room fell silent, all except the sound of my heartbeat that had sped up. Apparently, he had gotten the reaction he wanted. His smile grew wider. You made it too easy though, walking out there all alone. I just stood there, still frozen, staring at the floor. Did he really not know about the wolves? I was confused. Maybe they didn't know that the pack had been watching for them, but how could they not have seen them? Keys, the tallest one tried to continue. We had a bit of a problem. The word problem didn't sit well with me. I knew what he had to have meant by problem, and either way it involved someone I cared about. I snapped out of my frozen trance, my body shook a little and I focused on the vampire. Keys looked irritated. He looked to the door I had come in and there was two more guards standing there. He nodded his head in my direction and the two started walking in my direction. No, I'm not going anywhere, I shouted, while kicking at them once they had grabbed each of my arms. I managed to knock one of them off me and started kicking the other. The one I had kicked down got up, wrapped both his arms around my waist, and picked me up off the ground. I kicked the other vampire in the face, wiggling to get away from the other. Keys, I thought she was human, one of them said as he was struggling with me. I was still in his hold, kicking and swinging my arms, trying anything to get him to put me down before I realized what he had said. I stopped for a moment and looked up at Keys, who looked very confused. He glared at me. I'll just kill her now, he said as he stood up. No, I yelled again as I started kicking and swinging again. Keys, the tall vampire shouted impatiently. There are wolves with the Cullens. Keys was frozen. Wolves? He asked, slowly turning his head in the vampire's direction, confused. Yes, wolves. They were huge. Biggest I have ever seen. I froze again for a moment. Why was the pack with the Cullens? I couldn't make sense of it at first, but I lost my thought once again when I noticed Keys's expression was quickly replaced with terror. If he wasn't already so pale, I'm sure he would have looked it. I wondered if he had a problem with werewolves. No, he whispered, lost in thought for a moment. Send more guards and get rid of them. I will join once I am finished with her. You may go now, he said. Then he looked back at me, same expression on his face. Don't, I thought you only wanted me, I yelled as I pushed the guard that was holding me off. And you two may leave now as well, Keys said, still glaring as he walked towards me. Why are you doing this? I asked, though it came as a sharp snarling sound. This changes things a little, he mumbled. A million different thoughts and questions flashed through my mind again, but the only thing that I could really focus on was the vampires that were leaving. Beef. Or I thought otherwise. I ran after them, hoping to make it out the door. Stop her, Keys yelled, but I had already pushed them out of my way and I was out the door. I could hear more yelling but I ignored it. I had to get back to Jake. I had to make sure they were all okay. I had no idea just how many guards Keys had brought with him, but I wasn't about to wait to find out. I kept running and at first I had thought they chasing after me, either that or they went a different way, but as soon as I thought of it, one of the vampires flew right into me. I slammed into the wall, but was able to move quickly away from his fist. The other vampire was right behind me, lunging at me. I jumped back far enough that he didn't catch me. Both of them looked at me for a second while my back was against the wall. I could tell they were still trying to figure me out, but I didn't give them much time. A second was all I needed. I pushed myself off the wall and phased in mid-run, just in time to run GHT into Keys as he came from the other end of the hallway. I got back up and ran as fast as I could away from them. I could tell they weren't too far behind, but I didn't let anything slow me down. I kept running and finally noticed a window that was lit dimly from the sunrise. I turned back quickly and jumped right through the glass. I was glad to find that it wasn't too far of a drop down. I ran toward the nearest trees. I didn't have any idea where I was, but I was sure I wasn't too far away. Jake. The vampires continued to run after me. I tried running in different directions to lose them. But they were faster than I had thought. After a while of running zigzags through the trees, things started to look more familiar and I couldn't tell if they were still behind me or not. I realized that with all the focus on what was going on, that I had kept the pack blocked out. I stopped running for a minute and the vampires were nowhere close to me. I figured they had given up, didn't think I could have lost them that easily. I sat down to catch my breath as I opened my mind up. Still no trace of her anywhere, but there is even more sense of the bloodsuckers. They're everywhere. She has to be somewhere. She didn't just vanish into thin air. They have to have her. Why else would they be roaming around aimlessly? I'm not sure what they are doing, but if she isn't with them then they have to be looking for something else. Or watching something. The voices were faint hums beating through my head along with my heart. I couldn't quite tell who was who, but I could pick Jacob's thoughts out of them all. I told you something was going to happen, that's why I went after her. I don't know why she felt the need to walk alone, but I trusted her to be okay. I shouldn't have left her alone. I should have listened to him. I thought, what is that? What? I hear someone else out there. Bella, I'm here, I said breathlessly. I started running in their direction, carefully making sure I didn't run into any other vampires. Bella, where were you? Where are you? Are you okay? What happened? What's going on? All their questions rushed together in my head. I didn't know what to answer first. Start with, are you okay? Sam said. Yeah, I'm fine. Now, what happened? Keys. He had some guards that he brought with him hunt me down. They took me to this place, still not sure what it was, didn't take the time to find out. He planned to kill me, but with a distraction and luck, I got away. How? What distraction? Jake asked. For some reason Keys is terrified of werewolves. When a guard member came in and told him you were out here, he panicked. He sent 2 vampires away and I ran out before them. I had to fight them off, but I was able to phase in time and jumped out a window. For some reason, I'm thinking the fogginess from the hit to the head, I couldn't phase. I couldn't focus. Once he found out about you guys he ordered more guards out to kill you. He was distracted and I was more focused. Luckily, he sent mostly all of his guards out, so I had a better chance. Jake didn't like seeing the visions of it all in my head. He started growling and whimpered as he started running. I didn't know where he was running until I saw myself in his vision. I was closer to him than I had thought and started running towards him. Once we were together, he nuzzled his head against mine and I relaxed. I should have listened to you. I'm sorry, I told him. At the same time, I noticed someone was at the Cullen house. Is anything else going on? I asked and was immediately bombarded with so many different thoughts I couldn't pick out one. A bit slower please. Jake looked away from me, but didn't say anything right away. No one did. I concentrated to see if I could pick someone out of their heads and gasped. What happened to Edward? They got him. Seems to be about the same time they got you, Jake answered. Suddenly my memory flashed over the muffled voice I heard when I was hit in the head. Then to that dream of me standing in the meadow, someone calling my name. The smile that widened when Keys said Edward wasn't able to help me this time. The words he said played in my head. One way or another I was going to get to you. He planned it all along. I didn't know what to do, or what to even think, especially now that I have gotten away from him. What would he do to Edward? What might he have done already? I couldn't bear to think about any of it. Things between him and me may have changed, but I still couldn't stand to think about anything or anyone hurting him. I did not want to imagine him not existing anymore. Before the thought had officially sunk in, I was on my feet and running. I had to get to Alice. Where are you going? Jake asked. Alice. She has to know something. Anything will do. They took him to get to me. I'm not going to let them hurt him. What if it's too late, Bella? That will just put you back in danger, Sam said. I have to make sure. I'm just going to see if Alice has seen anything. I'll decide what to do after I talk to her. Bella, you can't just go running back in there. What if they do still have him? What if they have already hurt him? What are you going to do? Walk right into their trap? I don't know yet, but Sam, what would you do if it were Leah? What if it was you they wanted and they took Leah instead? All of the thoughts of the pack had come to a stop. No one ever brought up his past with Leah. Well, except for Leah, but it was the only thing I had that could make him understand. Just as I thought, he did. I got a glimpse of old memo. Rise of his with Leah, and she was actually shocked that he still thought of those occasionally. She finally got her proof that he still cared. The proof that he hated that he hurt her the way he did. I seen a little bit of peace finally settle in Leah in that moment. Be careful, Bella, Sam said as I walked up to the Cullens' house, and Jake groaned. He didn't want Sam to give in so easily. Damn it. Jake, I need you. I slightly laughed. What? I don't have clothes. Oh, he laughed. All right, I'm coming. Once he reached where I was and phased out, I could see Alice walking outside. I wanted so badly to be able to talk to her myself. They have Edward, don't they? Jake asked. Yes, Alice said, looking away. Well, what's going on? I couldn't really tell until about a minute ago. Since Bella is there, it's still fuzzy though. That's what I realize now. I'm sorry I couldn't warn you, I didn't know. I don't know how they are able to keep this from me. It's like the damn newborns all over again. I hadn't seen Alice that mad in a long time. I was irritated that I couldn't phase out and comfort her somehow, since it wasn't her fault, but instead I walked out and put my head on her hand. Bella, you got out. How? She asked, shocked. That guy's lack of guards wherever he took her allowed her to escape easier. Plus, I guess he's afraid of werewolves. Once he heard about us, he freaked out. Jake said proudly. Of course, they don't honor truces with werewolves. There was something that Carlisle said once about Keys almost being killed by one a long time ago. Don't know much more than that though. That got me wondering why I hadn't seen anyone except for Alice and Edward those last couple of days. So what all do you know? Anything that could help us out? By the way, where's the rest of your family? Guess we were on the same page about more than one thing. Carlisle is trying to find a way to get a hold of Arrow and find out why this is happening this way. Esme, of course, went with him. Emmett and Rose went out to see what else they could do. Jasper is in the house on the phone with Carlisle right now. A lot of good this ability is if I just keep seeing blank spots, or nothing at all. Wouldn't that be because the wolves are around? Jake asked. I thought so, but even with Bella in the building with Keys, I could still see a little bit. I think it's because I was so close to her before. Even when she is phased in with you guys, I can see things a little more clearly than I could if you guys were alone out there. Makes sense. A little. He laughed. Okay, well, we'll be back. Let us know if you know any more. We'll do what we can. I will. She paused for a moment, looking down. The worst part is, I don't even know if he is okay or not. I just know he is there. The look on her face took all the thoughts out of my head. She patted me on the head before she turned to walk back into the house, and I just stood there staring at a window. Jake walked back into the trees and phased in. You okay? He asked. Not really, no. This wasn't supposed to happen this way. They were just supposed to come after me. They were supposed to see that no, I wasn't a vampire. But that I wasn't a human either. I had my own new secrets to keep from humans. I thought that would matter, possibly change their mind. Guess I was wrong. I still just sat there staring. LL find him bells and we'll get that damn bloodsucker too. Jake said as he rested his head on mine. I was surprised that he actually wanted to help find Edward. Well, you shouldn't be, he said, responding to my thought. It's hurting you, and I don't want you to hurt over this. It's not your fault. I know you care about him. I know you always will, and well, I'm okay with that. Let's just say I had me time to think about the more important things, and I know what that is now. I didn't know what to say, didn't have time to think about it before Embry interrupted. Okay, now that the gushy love crap is over with, can we go kill some leeches now? The rest of the pack started going crazy with thoughts on what they would do when they finally got a hold of the vampires. To be honest, I couldn't wait either. A few hours had passed. But nothing new had happened. Jacob went over to my house to sneak upstairs and grab me some clothes. Good thing it was still early enough in the morning that Charlie was still asleep. Wasn't ready to deal with him yet. I couldn't tell exactly what we were waiting for, but no one had gotten any ideas and just sitting around was starting to drive me crazy. I had Lear, Ned enough from the earlier experience that walking around alone to clear my head wasn't the brightest idea right now, so instead Jake and I went to Sam and Emily's to get something to eat. Emily was at least glad for the company. I don't know how she could stand being alone like that all the time. Jake had fallen asleep on the couch and we still had about 30 minutes before we had to go back someone else in the pack to take a break. I didn't want to sleep and I ended up helping Emily clean up a little. You know, it's not too late to still think positively, you know, Emily said after as I was putting a plate away. I know, but I can't help it. What were you supposed to do? Search for him? You didn't know. I can't help but feel a little guilty over it. They couldn't find me. Oh, they took him knowing I would find out soon enough. Only flaw in his little plan is that I'm not with Edward anymore, but that doesn't mean I won't try my hardest to get to him, because I will. Emily put her hand on my shoulder. And I looked down. Since the situation in Phoenix I've wanted to be something more than just human, so I could defend myself and the people I cared about. Fight along with them, not behind them, hidden. It may not have happened the way I thought it would have, but I was happy. But even after that, I still couldn't help but feel so weak. I had no idea where Edward was, or if he was even okay. I felt even more weak and powerless than I had when I was just a normal girl. Hey girls, Jared said as he and Paul walked through the door. Guess your time's up. Where's Jake? I didn't even realize the time had passed so quickly, but I was ready to get out there. Still asleep. I'll get him, I said as I walked over to the couch. No, I'll wake him up, Paul said with a laugh. I rolled my eyes. Wake up Jackie, he said as he lifted up the couch and dumped Jake on the floor. Jake was not going to be happy about that. What the hell? Damn it Paul, Jake said as he threw a punch towards at him. Jared was laughing loudly from behind me. I glanced at Emily and she was just shaking her head. Okay boys, don't break my furniture, she said as she started fixing more to eat for Paul and Jared. All right, let's go Jake, I said, interrupting their fight. I'll get you back for that asshole, Jake said. He wrapped an around my waist and we walked out the door, laughing. I was glad they still found things to joke and laugh about during times like that. It helped, can't really explain why it did, but it helped keep my head clear and not go completely crazy. Once we were phased, we got an update. There was no new sense, which to me, was bad. It meant they were all grouped up inside, planning what to do next or worse, with Edward. It made me feel like we had even less time. So no ideas on how to solve this yet, nothing from Alice or any of them. This is getting. Bella calm down, we'll get him. I promise. I wanted to believe him, but for some reason I couldn't. It's been too long already. I walked away from Jake a little. I was getting tired of just sitting and doing nothing, so I started looking around. I walked a little farther than planned and Jake just followed so he was close enough to me. After about 2 minutes of walking I caught a scent of something. I noticed it was from one of the guards that was in the room with me and Keys. Possibly even the one of the ones that had attacked me. Once I looked up, I noticed I was almost to the meadow. I kept following the scent and as I got closer to the meadow, I picked up Edward's scent. He was there. I followed it and it seemed to lead me for miles. I started running in the direction it was leading me. Bella, hold on. No, I've got to follow this. Bella, what if he was with there, but not for the reason you think? Jared said as he was phasing back in. I skidded to a stop. What are you saying? Well, I was thinking about it and well, what if he was helping them find you? Coming to us to give us the details, while at the same time leading them to you. It's just a thought. I didn't think of it that way before. Good point, Sam said. You've got to be kidding me. Why would Edward do that? Why would he help the ones he hates kill me? Revenge. You left him. Not only did you just leave him, but you left him for a wolf. I would assume to a vampire that has to be pretty bad. That's not even he wouldn't do that. Edward would never help them, especially not to kill me. I couldn't believe what they were actually saying. I didn't even have to think about that to know that that couldn't be what Edward was doing. Edward would never hurt me, at least never on purpose would he. I couldn't think about it anymore. I continued to run down that scent faster than before. Bella, please wait. No, I have to get to him. Bella, not alone, Sam ordered, but that was the last thing I heard. I couldn't handle hearing them anymore. I needed to know that he was okay. I needed to know that he had no part in that whatsoever. I couldn't believe I let them put that thought in my head. I had to block them out. I had no idea exactly where I was running to, but his scent was getting a little stronger. I knew I was almost there. After a little while longer, I started to catch many more scents. The smells of all the different vampires was becoming almost too painful. I could barely even stay on Edwards, but I did. After I go to the final hill and went over it, I could see it. It was an old abandoned factory. Of course, I ran closer to the building and wasn't sure whether I could go inhuman or try to fight them off as a wolf. Way to think ahead, Bella. I suddenly wasn't so sure coming alone wasn't a good idea, but it was too late. The wind blew harder and I knew I wasn't going to be alone for much longer. I ran towards the back, away from the vampire that was coming. I stopped to listen and there was no one back there. I ran farther back, into some trees that were there and phased out. Sneaking in would be easier as a human. I just have to remember to focus so I can phase on time. Once I was dressed, I ran to where I spotted a door. It wasn't locked, but then again why would they need it to be locked? They are vampires. I'd be more scared for the person trying to break in. After I was inside, there was a long dark, empty hallway. There was no scent of Edward at that entrance, but at least I knew he was in there, somewhere. I kept walking, stopping every so many feet to listen for anything. When I had finally reached the first door, I listened to anything that might have been in it and was lucky I did. Find anything out yet? Keys asked. No sir, she's back with them and they are circling the area. Guarding I assume. What do you want us to do? Once the guards are ready, we'll get rid of them. What about the Cullen? Don't care. I didn't know what to think about that, but I knew, somehow, that he was okay. At least for now. I could hear the footsteps of one of the vampires heading for the door. I didn't want them to get too close otherwise they may know I was there. Wasn't sure what I was doing, but that wouldn't work out too well either way. I turned back and ran back out the door. Once outside, I noticed the sun starting to set and thought about Charlie. I remembered the promise I made him. I couldn't get Edward alone. I started walking back toward the trees. Then the wind blew another scent my way and that time it was the familiar one I was looking for. I decided to follow it and it led me to another door, but on the other side of the building. I listened to the other side of door before I tried opening it and it was quiet. I twisted the doorknob slowly and pulled. The room was dark with a horrible damp smell. I looked around, but it was empty. I walked across the room until I reached another door and opened it. The space was small, but had two more doors on each side. I didn't know which one to choose. I turned to my left, listening and heard nothing. But then Edward's scent was clear and a bit more recent. I knew that's where he had to be. I pulled open the door and there was a staircase. Before I could even think about going down, I heard footsteps. Listening closer, I noticed they were coming from the room of the door I didn't open. I pushed the staircase door shut quietly and decided to get out of there. When the vampires had gotten closer, I heard them talking about something. Edward. I didn't have much time. As soon as I turned to run back to the last door, I noticed they had stopped talking. I was too close. I ran to the door and ran outside, not wasting any time. I didn't look to see if they followed or not. After I had gotten about a mile away, I decided that it was time to let the pack know. I walked a little more into a utter of trees and took my clothes off to phase in. Right as I was about to release the block, something snuck up behind me, snarling. Decided to come back, huh? A male vampire asked angrily. It sounded dead like the tallest one that was in the room with keys. I turned to look at him, growling in response. He stared at me for a moment with narrowed eyes. I had no idea what he was doing, but whatever it was he was completely focused on it. I took one step to my right and he snapped out of his trance, looking somewhat angrier than he had been before. So it's true. he said very angrily. Then it hit me. He had some sort of ability and it didn't work on me. I took another step to my right, never taking my eyes off him, and that's when he lunged. I didn't have much experience in fighting, except what I had to deal with that day. But I pulled all that I had into him. I leapt up, colliding with him in midair, slamming back down on the ground on top of him. He tried to get an arm around me, but I jumped back. The preparations for the newborns popped into my head then, and I remembered the fighting. He jumped at me again, but I dodged him. At some point I had unblocked my mind and I heard a rush of the pack's voices. I stopped for a moment, shaking my head, and he pounced on top of me. I threw my head back, knocking him directly in the jaw. It only stunned him for a second, but that helped. I was able to get out of his reach and back to circling with him. I don't know if he was brave or stupid, but for the third time he jumped at me. I swung my head at him just as he got to me. His back ass lammed into the tree that was about 4 feet away, knocking it over. I could hear the scrambled thoughts of the pack trying to figure out what was going on. Where is she? She's fighting a vampire. What the hell? Someone get to her now. I didn't let them distract me again. This time, while the vampire was getting back up, I pounced on him, biting his arm. I ripped it right off. It was a disgusting sound. I was stunned, yet proud at the same time. Whoa, I heard several of the guys say. Tearing his arm off wasn't enough to stop him though. He sprang up over me. Apparently, I just pissed him off even more. He ran at me, swinging his good arm at me, knocking me a few feet away. My head slammed into a rock. Bella. I tried to get up, but that fall had hurt pretty badly. As much as I hated to, I didn't move. It only took a second for the ache to stop. I flipped over onto my stomach, looking up at the vampire. Almost there. We both stood there staring for a moment, but I had had enough. I put every bit of my anger into it and I sprang up, jaw opened wide, aiming for his neck. I had no idea what exactly I was doing, but I just went with instincts I didn't know I had until right then. He didn't move, he didn't flinch or run, and maybe I wasn't paying enough attention, but I had him. I sunk my teeth right into his neck, jerking my head from side to side, listening to the sound of his skin ripping and shredding. One last jerk and I managed to take his head completely off, flinging it down a hill. Wow, I thought. Suddenly something was telling me that was too easy. Sure enough, before I had even stepped off the vampire's body, I looked up towards the building to see at least 3 vampires coming my way. I froze. Oh shit, I knew I was about to die. I could feel it creeping up on me as the vampires grew closer. I closed my eyes tightly and braced myself for the impact, but what I heard instead was not what I was expecting. I must have blocked the pack out again, because I hadn't known they were that close to me. They stepped out in front of me just in time and were instantly busy with fighting off the guards. I tried to snap out of my frozen state and Sam's voice broke through and helped me. Alice is waiting for you. Go with her to find Edward, he told me. I wasn't sure what to do. I wanted to go find Edward and I wanted to make sure he got out of there safely, but every thing inside me was telling me that I needed to stay here and help the pack. It was telling me that I couldn't leave Jake here. Bella, go. I'll be fine. We'll all be fine. Help her find him, he said. Just as he was saying it, Alice called my name. You're sure? I asked. Yes. I was still hesitant, but I threw myself forward and ran with Alice back to the factory. Getting inside was no problem. It seemed as though mostly all the guards were out over the hill with the pack. That didn't help settle my nerves any. We made it all the way down the stairs and just picked up a stronger scent of Edward when we were suddenly stopped. Keys was standing in the middle of the room, blocking the door where I knew Edward was held. Abilities are powerless to the wolves as long as you're joined with them. Keys said as he walked slowly towards us. That is easy enough to fix. Run, Bella, Alice told me, but I couldn't. I couldn't get my legs to move. I crouched down, ready to attack him. I couldn't leave the sudden strong urge I had to destroy him. I growled as I crept, just as slowly as he had, towards him. It was an icy cold hand on my back that stopped me. Bella, please don't do this. Please, don't give in to the violent urge within you. It's not who you are, Carlyle whispered. Keys laughed somewhat hysterically and I snarled at him. I tried to steady my focus. I needed to be careful and not block the pack out. I knew if I did that, they would die. Just as Keys wanted. But I also tried not to focus on what they were doing. Instead, I looked at Alice and nodded my head. With the three of us, there should be no problem getting Edward out. The only problem I found was, I couldn't do it alone and I didn't want to leave Carlisle alone with Keys. I shifted several times with confusion and irritation. I just happened to look up at Alice when she nodded back at me and I took off running. I plowed right through the door, which led to another room. I instantly wondered just what kind of factory it had been. But then I was distracted. Edward's scent was very strong. "Bella," he called out and I ran in the direction of his voice. "Bella, you're alone?" he asked. I shook my head as I got closer to him. "I thought they killed you." "Alice couldn't," he whispered before stopping completely. I whimpered when it suddenly made sense why he was still there. He could have gotten out if he wanted to, I was sure of it. But he stayed because he thought I was dead. Once again giving himself over to the Volturi because of me. I was suddenly very angry at him, but that would have to wait. His eyes were dark and he was sitting on the floor staring at nothing. The only light in the room was what had come from behind me. I was nudging him to get up, when I heard the sudden footsteps running up behind us. Once he stood, I jerked around to face the oncoming guards. I crouched down, ready to lunge, growling at them. They walked slowly towards us. "Be careful," Edward whispered to me. He guards returned with their own menacing growls and one lunged at me. I met him in mid-air. The sound of our collision vibrated of the walls in the dark room. He snarled as he tried to grab my neck with his hands. I was just barely faster than him, and as he reached in one more time, I slammed my head into his. He went back a few feet and I pounced on him, biting him wherever my teeth would land. He groaned in pain as I heard the tearing of his shoulder and I jumped backwards off him. My head was swarming with all the different thoughts of the pack as they were going through the same thing. While I had a second, I glanced to see if Edward was okay, but he was fighting with the other vampire. I didn't get a chance to see how that was going, because 1 second was too long and the vampire was on top of me. I wiggled and jumped, trying to knock him loose, but he would let go. I ran with him still on me, to the nearest wall, slamming my side into it over and over until he lost his grip and I shook him off. The growling started again as I stood in front of him, circling each other. I realized in that moment we were alone in the room. I stopped circling and stared at him, studying his movements. I knew he was going to jump on me again the first chance he got. I looked up and noticed a huge empty bookshelf to my right and I knew it had to be decently heavy. I ran sideways, slamming myself into and backed up. It may not have been heavy enough to stop him, but it distracted him. Just as I hoped, it fell forward, landing on the vampire before he knew which move to make. His already wounded arm was sticking out and I moved quickly before he had a chance to knock the shelf off. I bit down on his arm as hard as I could, ripping it away and tossing it to the other side of the room. The bookshelf was lifted and he stood there reaching out the good arm. I hadn't fully planned that all through enough because once I backed up, I realized that in knocking the shelf over, I put myself into a corner. I tried to jump away, but he moved quicker than I had time to think. He had his hand at my throat and slammed my head repeatedly into the wall. I didn't know what his point was, but it sure hurt a whole hell of a lot. I leapt towards him, trying to break his grip, but I didn't have any room. All I did was help him in slamming my head once more. My head was foggy and throbbing. The voices of the pack were fading. One voice caught me off guard as he shouted my name. At the same time the hand at my throat disappeared. "Bella, focus. Don't let him win," Edward yelled. "Focus on the pack." It took a minute to register. But luckily I hadn't lost them yet, though it was close. I shook my head while standing up. Edward was now fighting the armless vampire and he wasn't alone. Emmett was there too. "Go back to the pack, they need you more," Emmett said. "Carlisle and Alice are with Keys. Arrow is on his way. The rest are scattered fighting off the guards." I nodded once and took off running out the door. But before I heard the vampire's last shriek, I ran all the way to the stairs noticing that Keys and Carlisle weren't where they were before. Before I could get further into thought on that subject, I heard the whimper of a wolf that echoed through the thoughts of the pack and echoed through my entire body. I couldn't see through anyone else's eyes what was going on, I could only see red. I ran faster than I could have imagined. I knew who it was. I felt who it was. I just couldn't get to him fast enough. I hated this. All of this. I didn't even know where to start. On the list of hate for everything that had happened. Because of me, everyone was in danger. Because of me, the entire pack and the Cullens were fighting about a quarter of the Volturi guard, and I had no idea if they all would survive. I made it away from the building and pushed myself farther until he was in sight. He wasn't moving. I focused on calming myself so I could make out the words that the voices were speaking. He was alive, barely, but unconscious. I slowed myself next to him, still panicking. Oh my God, Jake, wake up, wake up. I shouted to him, but he didn't move. I nudged him with my nose. He flinched very little, but as long as I got a reaction, I was a little better. What happened? I asked Sam as he was running over. He lost focus and was crushed. I can't tell what kind of damage is done. But he's alive. He lost focus. How? I asked, afraid of the answer. He thought the vampire had you. Your thoughts were fading and well, he didn't finish. He didn't have to finish. God, I was screwing everything up. I collapsed on the ground next to him, but then I quickly remembered what else was going on as Sam ran back to help someone. I jumped back up, but couldn't move. I didn't want to leave Jake. But I didn't want to not help either. I was torn. Stay with him, Bella. If he's alone, he's an easy target. I shuddered. I sat back down, but watched carefully. It seemed that they were just finishing up and everything was under control. I really have always underestimated the werewolves. Something crunched behind me and I turned quickly, snarling. Wow, they're killer. Emmett laughed. I shook my head, but turned back around, looking at Jake. He still wasn't moving. Damn, is he okay? He asked. I did the best I could at shrugging, the best that a wolf could do anyways. Edward should be on his way. Looks like the wolves did better than I thought. Too bad I couldn't have gotten a better piece of action. Which, by the way, you did pretty good back there. He laughed lightly. I didn't respond. Hey, maybe we can carry him somewhere until Carlisle can look at him. I mean, sitting out here like that isn't the best way to stay alive. I shook my head again. Bella, nothing will happen to him. Besides, he has pretty shitty luck on his own anyways. He got crushed during the newborn attack too. He wasn't trying to make a joke, but it still stung. Both times were because of me. I had no idea what was supposed to happen. I vaguely remembered Emmett saying Arrow was on his way and I had no idea if that was a good thing or a bad thing. After all, he was in on the decision to either kill me or change me, and even though he apparently didn't support Key's choice in the attack, it didn't mean he would side with me either. I just wanted it all to be over with already. Emmett had walked away and was starting a fire to burn the parts of vampire that covered the forest ground. I stood there watching as he and the pack cleaned up the mess. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Edward enter the area. I didn't move. He walked over towards Emmett as he pointed at me. I looked down again. I was glad I couldn't talk to him. I'm so glad you're okay, he said, running over to me, but stopping shortly. Looking down at Jake, a tear fell from my eye. He didn't speak and I didn't look at him. This is all my fault, he whispered, and that got my attention. I looked up at him confused and he continued. If I never went to the Volturi in the first place, this never would have happened. None of this would have. I never thought of it that way, and he was right. He sat down on the ground. He looked deep in thought. And when I say none of this, I mean I wouldn't have lost you and this definitely wouldn't be happening, he added quietly. I stared at him as my body tensed. Jake was lying almost dead on the ground and he turned it around to be about him. What the hell is his problem? What is he talking about? I heard the pack voices echo in unison, but I ignored them. If I wouldn't have left you after your birthday, we would have caught Victoria. We wouldn't have ever gone to Italy. You wouldn't have had to spend your time with wolves. There wouldn't have been the newborn fight. You and him wouldn't have imprinted on each other. There would be no danger to make you turn into one of them. I should have just changed you when you asked me to. I should have listened to you, and now everything has changed. It's all gone to hell. The very place I was worried. I didn't let him finish. I didn't even think. I couldn't handle what he was saying. Not only was he turning it around on himself, He was making it look like what I had become was a bad thing. Sure, I may not have chosen it on my own, not really anyways. Not that there was a way I could have, but I was happy. I was happy, and once again he was trying to turn it around, blinding himself from the truth. Just like he had done after my birthday. He destroyed me then, but he wasn't going to get the chance this time. Before I realized what I was doing, I was standing up, facing him, and growling about 3 inches from his face. He didn't even flinch. What the hell is going on? I heard Leah ask. Oh, I've got to see this. Hall said excitedly. Bella, you need to stay calm. With Sam's order, everyone was quiet. I tried to calm myself. I backed away, but not removing my eyes from him. Emmett walked over and pulled Edward off the ground. Edward didn't fight it, didn't even look up at me. And right then, in the pit of my stomach, I understood him again. He got the reaction he wanted out of me. He wanted me to get mad at him. He wanted me to lose control. Why was he doing all of this to me? Emmett looked up at me. I'll be right back to help with him, he said, pointing at Jake. I didn't take my eyes off Edward. I was only pulled out of my haze of anger I never thought I would feel towards Edward, when I felt Jake in my head. I jerked my head in his direction and he was trying to get up. He was barely even conscious yet. Jake, wait, don't move. I told him, crouching down by him. Bella, are you okay? He asked. Yes, I'm fine. Are you? You look pretty badly hurt. It's not so bad, he said with a light laugh. And I knew he would be okay, though a confirmation from a doctor would help too. According to Emmett, all that was left was Keys. The rest of the Cullens went back to the factory to wait for the Volturi. Alice saw that it wouldn't be long. Keys was pretty confident that Arrow would back him up in his decision, so he wasn't trying to run or anything. I still couldn't be sure. There was one this I was sure of. Arrow wouldn't be too pleased with losing so many of his guard members. I doubt I could benefit from that at all though. After some discussion and arguments, we decided to take Jake back to the factory too. It would be a while before Carlisle could get away, but with him healing so fast, I wanted to be sure there was no permanent damage. After a couple of minutes, Sam and Jake finally agreed. It only took a minute, since that was all we had. Carlisle was sure that even without X-rays, Jake would heal just fine with some rest. He told Emmett that since he had Hi's Jeep and was going to give us a ride back to the res, then he should run to the house to get some pain medication for him. Emmett agreed. Most of the pack returned with us and few stayed behind to make sure things went okay. Once we got to Jake's house, I was glad Billy was out fishing with Charlie and not at home. I would have hated to see their expression when we all walked up. I didn't realize how sore I was until after Sam took Jake inside to rest. I sat outside relaxing while I waited for Emmett to come back with the medicine. Every muscle in my body ached, my ribs ached, and when I lifted up my shirt a little to see my stomach, there was some light bruising. It had already almost healed, but I felt horrible. I rested my head against the wall with my eyes closed and thought a little about everything that had happened. One thing that stuck in my mind was Emmett. I wasn't sure why Emmett was helping us, and though I was grateful, I couldn't help but ask. After Jake got his meds, Emmett sat next to me on the porch. He didn't even have to think about his answer. Bella, you've always been like my little sister. That hasn't changed, even now that everything else has. Even after this Wolfie stuff, you were still there to help our family. Even though it's because of us that this has happened. I tried to say something, but he held his hand up for me to stop. Edward didn't ask before. He brought you home to us and we're glad he did. And I mean it, we all are. It's his other actions that have caused this, and because we're a family, that makes it all of us. We could have put our foot down and said no, but we didn't. We let him believe it was the right thing to do, and this is what it has led to. Right now, you can't blame him for his actions, not really anyways. I know you had no choice. But he's heartbroken, and even after all he's done to you before, you still risked your life to save his, again. One day he'll be okay, so don't worry about him. We won't let him do anything stupid again, he laughed. So, no matter what, you are still a part of our family. You're just a less fragile version of the same human, Bella. We both laughed. And, I guess that means the dog's part of the family too, huh? He smiled. I jumped up and hugged him. I couldn't help it. I wanted to talk to you about this before, but there was never really a chance to. So, that's your answer. Just don't expect to get all mushy like that again, he said, still laughing, and he squeezed me tighter than he normally would have. Oh, he said, pulling away, bringing the back of his hand to his nose. That smell is just going to take a while to get used to. We both laughed again. A moment later we were interrupted by Sam coming outside to tell me that Jake was awake and wanted to see me. I said goodbye to Emmett as I walked back inside. He needed to get back over to the factory before the rest of the Volturi had gotten there, and I was sure they would need him. He also told me that they would let me know when it was my turn for the questioning. I wasn't entirely ready for it, but the sooner it was all over the better. I couldn't take the waiting anymore, but for right now I was content with knowing that Jake and well, everyone else for that matter, was okay. I smiled and let out a sigh as I walked into Jake's bedroom. He was sitting up, leaning against some pillows that were against the wall with his eyes closed. The first thing I did was walk over and wrap my arms gently around him. I knew that no matter what would happen, as long as he was by my side, I could handle anything. The time I had with Jake was cut short as usual. We were just relaxing enough that we started to doze off when we heard yelling coming from outside. Since Jake was still in a lot of pain, I told him to stay where he was and that I would go check it out. The yelling was louder the farther I had gotten outside and ended up running most of the way. I could tell who it was by the voice. Paul was lying on the ground behind Jake's house. Emily was standing over him trying to get him to lay still so she could wrap something on his knee. What happened? I asked Sam as I got closer. He got brave. He saw what he thought was the last vampire running away and chased him, Sam said, shaking his head. It turned out to be a trap. 2 vampires cornered him against a boulder. Leah and I just barely got to him in time. Is he okay? I mean, what's wrong? Well, from what I can see, his knee is broken and so is his arm. Seems like there's something wrong with his shoulder, but he swears he is okay and won't let anyone check it out. Carlisle have a chance to look at him? I asked. I don't need no damn leech, ouch. I'm fine, Paul yelled, but I could tell he wasn't fine. Carlisle didn't have time. The whatever they're called are there. My heart sunk into my stomach. It was time and I had no idea what to expect the outcome to be. I'll go get some of Jake's pain meds, I said, steering to Paul as I turned to walk back into the house. As I walked back inside, I closed the door and leaned my back against it and stood still. My breathing became hard and ragged with tears escaping my eyes as I sunk to the floor. It would be stupid to deny that I was terrified. They could decide to let me live. I could go on, live a full and happy life with Jacob. Do whatever I chose, whenever I chose to do it, or they could choose to end my life. Right here, right now. I had no control over anything they decided to do. I knew I should have been with the Cullens sorting out my future, but I couldn't leave Jake. I couldn't leave Charlie. Even though he wasn't there, he would be soon, and I wanted to be the one to tell him what happened. I wanted a chance to say goodbye, but at the same time, I wanted to fight for it all. I had never felt so helpless before. Bells, you okay? I heard Jake grumble as he slowly limped out of his room. I wiped the tears away, sniffling as I stood up. Yeah, I'm fine, I lied. Bells, he grunted and groaned as he tried to limp faster to me. Jake, you need to stay in bed, I told him, meeting him the rest of the way, wrapping an arm around his waist. I tried to lead him to the couch at least, but he held me still. Stop, Bells, it's okay to be scared. I'm scared, but I'm not going to just sit here and do nothing. As much as I hate to sound all Edward Cullen here, I couldn't live without you. He brushed the leftover tears from my eyes and more started to fall. He leaned in, kissed my forehead, and then moved his lips to mine. He pulled away a little, and while putting a hand on my cheek, he stared into my eyes. Isabella Swan, you are the most important thing in this world to me. They aren't going to get you so easily. If they want you, they are going to have to kill all of us. Quote, I pushed up on my toes, carefully pulling him closer, and crushed my lips to his. Every kiss we shared was exactly like the first one. Electric currents flowing, blood boiling. The intensity was unlike anything I had ever heard of or felt, and it only got better each time. I hated to pull away, but I knew I had to. "Be right back," I told Jake as I ran in his bedroom and ran back out. "What are those for?" he asked. "Paul," I told him, completely forgetting he didn't know yet. What happened? Paul was, well, being stupid. They thought they had gotten all the vampires. But instead of letting the pack know, when he saw one he chased it. It led him into a trap with another vampire and they cornered him before the pack had gotten to him. Couple broken bones, but other than that he's fine. Jake sighed. "Okay, hurry back." I smiled. "I will, but only if you get back into bed." "Yes ma'am," he said and wobbled back to his bedroom. Back outside, Paul wasn't any calmer. He was still in a lot of pain and I was starting to think the healing wasn't going right. I gave him some of the pain meds. After he refused twice, he finally gave in. I didn't know what to do about the broken bones. Emily tried to wrap his knee, but it was useless. I was pretty sure it was shattered and he didn't let her touch it. I talked to Sam a few minutes about the ideas of Paul's healing and the only thing we could agree on was he needed to see a doctor. Too bad that option was out since the only doctor who could was in the middle of debating my future. The healing phase. Tea from being a werewolf was great sometimes, but other times, if something heals incorrectly, it may have permanent damage. Sam told me I could go on back and check on Jake. I got halfway inside the house and the phone started ringing. I froze mid-step and held my breath. Jake peeked around the corner and saw me standing there and slowly walked over to answer the phone. Maybe it was slowly, I wasn't sure. Everything was in a sort of slow motion, even my heartbeat was slow. I couldn't hear the words that were spoken, I couldn't hear anything except for my own heartbeat, that was suddenly beating erratically. When he hung up the phone, everything went back to its normal movement with a sort of a whoosh. When I came back to the present, my hand was on my chest as I gasped for air. I tried to focus on what Jake was telling me. "Bella," he started, but I could tell by his tone, it wasn't good. He wouldn't look at me. "Jake, what is it?" I asked, as my heart was trying to pound out of my chest. "We have to go." He walked towards the door, grabbing my hand, leading me with him. "What's going on?" Breathing became painful as thoughts swarmed my head. "Sam, it started, just as we feared," he said, as soon as Sam was in sight. Sam turned to look at Jake, then me just before he looked at the ground. The rest of the pack froze, even Paul. What started? Will someone please tell me what's going on?" I begged. "Who told you?" Sam asked. The little one somehow snuck away to call. She saw it happening a minute ago and I could hear something going on in the background. "Are you not hearing me?" I shouted. No one would look at me. What exactly has happened already? Arguing. Jake froze, looking down at me. I couldn't figure out the look in his eyes, but as he spoke his next words, a pain that I had felt what seemed so long ago mildly returned, knocking the air out of me. Edward argued with them, until... What? I barely asked. I knew what it was he didn't want to say. I closed my eyes. I didn't want to even think the words. "Are they coming here?" Sam asked, and my knees weakened. "I'm not sure yet, but I don't think we should wait. If we go now, we might have a better chance," Jake told him. "Jake, you are not in any condition for more fighting," Sam said. "I can handle it." "Fighting? Who's fighting? Fighting for what? You're not fighting, you can barely stand. What the hell is going on?" I rambled on loudly. I took a step aside so I could see all of their faces at once. I felt a slight burn course through my veins. It took all that I had to keep it together. "Bella," Jake said, moving to put his hands on my shoulders. "Did you really think it would only be a discussion?" I wasn't sure. Maybe my hope had gotten in the way of the truth. Would they really be able to talk it out? Talk out the possibility of my death, the possibility of them letting the wolves live too. Two of the things the Volturi obviously disagreed with. Did I really think that they would let me live because I had become one of them? Why would that make me different? Why would that make me any better than human? As I stood there looking at the faces of people in front of me, the ones who accepted me into their family, the ones whose lives were more in danger now than ever because of it, I started thinking. What was it about me that brought the ones I loved so much danger? Was it really worth fighting for? Should I just hand the Volturi my life in return for everyone else's? Would that work? Surely I was not going to let them all fight for me again. Jake and Paul were already badly injured. Who had to die for it? No one. It was time I put a stop to it. Bella, Jake said, pulling me out of my trance. Stupidly, I responded. He tried to put his arms around me, but I stepped away. So what has happened already? I asked, taking a deep breath. I'm not really sure. But something happened to Edward. Anyone else possibly added to that list. My heart broke as I spoke, but I stayed strong. Visibly. No other specific names said, but I walked away in the middle of his sentence. I didn't need to hear any more. Bella, wait, he yelled, managing to run after me. No, Jacob, I can't. I'm done with this. What are you talking about? He asked as I started taking of my clothes. What are you doing? He turned away. I will not let anyone else get hurt. I surely will not be responsible for any deaths. They want me, they got me. After I tied my clothes to my ankle, I phased and started running, never looking behind and not listening for anyone else who may have joined me. I ran until I got to that old abandoned factory. As I got closer, I wondered why they never tore the damn things down after they were done with them. You never see them have any good use after they are abandoned. In movies, television shows, and even in real life, something bad always happened in them. Never once had I thought I would have something bad happen in one in my life. Then again, nothing in my life was something I had ever thought would happen. My life these days are like pages taken out of some fucked up book. I could only hope that, like any story, my life would have some type of happy ending too. Once I was there, I phased out and got dressed before I went in. Why couldn't werewolves talk? Sure, we could communicate with pack members, but not other supernatural things. Well, not unless that supernatural thing was a mind-reading vampire, that is. Whoever makes up the shit as they go had something seriously wrong with them. When I finally got my thoughts under control, for the moment, I took one last deep breath before walking into those same doors that held the one thing I truly feared. It felt like days had passed since the last time I had walked in there. Only this time I was positive I wouldn't be making it out. This time I had no hope. I could hear some type of commotion going on deep inside. It felt like I was going to puke. My stomach was in knots. I didn't know if my heart was going to explode and my brain was throbbing with every thought. How did everything come down to this? It was the final moment. I was right outside the last door, and I was sure they knew I was there. The room had suddenly gone silent. I didn't waste any time. I threw open the door and all the vampires froze. Well, there she is now, Arrow said in his sickeningly cheerful voice. Bella, what are you doing here? Alice asked, and she suddenly appeared by my side, with what looked like a guard member behind her. I couldn't look at her, I couldn't look at any of them, and I didn't have to know that Edward wasn't in the room, and neither was Keys. I stared at Arrow. I'm here, what do you want to do with me? I asked in a voice I didn't even recognize. Well, I'm a bit surprised, to tell you the truth. What would you like me to do with you? He asked, obviously curious about my response. You know, honestly, I don't even care anymore. If you want me dead for not following your rules, then do it. Get it over with. I will not have the ones I care about suffer for my existence. Bella, Carlyle started, but once Arrow moved, he stopped. I did not expect you to make this so easy. It's a shame it is already too late for no one to be hurt. Poor Edward could not agree with the decision. Any of them apparently, he said, looking down and shaking his head. I held my breath. Bella, don't do this, please, Esme whispered. I had kept my eyes on Arrow since I had walked through the door. I was in the moment when I looked at Esme that I realized the position everyone was in. I hadn't realized that just by me being there that everything would have stopped. At least not so suddenly. A couple of the beams were broken and some of the leftover machines were in pieces. Emmett's clothes were torn and dirty, and Jasper's were a little too. Alice looked terrified and Carlyle was calm as always. Esme looked like she would cry if she could, and Rosalie wouldn't even look at me. Not that there was a real surprise there. The room was silent, but the sound of slamming and the banging of doors was a quick interruption. In one moment it went from just the Volturi, the Cullens and myself, To a room full of wolves. The Volturi guard was quick to react. No, I yelled. Jacob was soon by my side and I couldn't believe he had actually phased. Then again, I should have. Reading the look in his eyes. He didn't have to speak for me to understand him. I had to. Jake, I told you, I couldn't take it anymore. I was focused on the look in his eyes when I suddenly felt a hand at my throat, pulling me back. Jake growled and another wolf moved to his side. It's too late, Arrow laughed. She's already made her decision. Arrow, please, there has to be a way to work this out, Carlyle said. Carlyle, you know the rules. You of all people should understand how we work. That doesn't make it right. She is no longer just human anymore. That should mean something, shouldn't it? No, she isn't one of us, but... No, she isn't. She's worse this way. To be one of them. He made a sound of disgust, as if it wasn't filled in voice. Please think about this. This is unneeded violence. Carlyle continued to persuade him, but his decision was made. I was as good as dead. The wolves were surrounding the area and the guard tried holding them back, but it wouldn't be long before they broke out into a fight. In that moment I realized how stupid I was, and stupid I had been all along. First, I really thought they would let me live, and second, I really had thought they would not fight after I died. There was only one option left. I looked at Arrow, the Cullens, then at the wolves. The wolves were growling. Sam was staring at me, trying to tell me something that I just couldn't understand. Alice wouldn't look at me. She too looked like she was about to cry. Carlyle looked sad and disappointed. I closed my eyes. I knew what I had to do. I agreed with Carlyle. I didn't like violence. But there was no other way out. The only thought that kept repeatedly bouncing around in my head was, it was now or never. Without really knowing what I was going to do, I opened my eyes. Looked at Sam one more time. Nodded my head once, turned as much as I could to look up at Arrow and smiled. He cocked his head to the side, confused. I held my smile, closed my eyes and phased. I could hear a gasp across the room. I couldn't tell who it had come from. The motion from phasing under his hand had knocked Arrow back. I stood in front of him, still staring. Behind me, I could hear each of the wolves growling as the sounds of battle started once again. Jake was at my side, couching down, snarling at Arrow. Well, look at this, Arrow said, laughing. Are you going to kill me? He asked. I didn't respond. I didn't know what I was going to do. Bella, that was the stupidest thing you have ever done, Jake said. Jake, now is not the time to discuss that, I told him. Before he had time to respond, something jumped on my back and dug its nails into me. I let out a howl as I jumped up, trying to get it off. It was one of the guards. I shook and jumped until I knocked him off. In that moment, with Jake and I distracted, Arrow took the advantage and lunged at me. I had never seen or heard of him fighting, but I supposed now would be as good of time as any. He was running out of guard members. Jake bit into his side and tried to pull him off, but his grip on my neck was too tight. I continued to try and shake them off of me, and the guard member decided to give up and go after Jake. Arrow finally let go and tried to lunge at me again, but I was a bit faster than he was. I jumped a few feet back from him and he kept trying to catch me as I darted back and forth. His smile disappeared, as he grew irritated. I tried to picture the room and realized that if I kept in that direction I would end up cornering myself again, so I moved to my left and we ended up circling. The room, a lot smaller than it had seemed before, was filled with vampire and werewolves once again teaming up to fight vampires to save my life. For a moment I wondered if there was ever going to be a day where I wasn't the constant target. But it was Sam's voice telling me to focus that knocked the thoughts away. Arrow was completely focused on me. His hands were extended out, hoping for a chance to catch me. I jumped forward and backward, waiting for my moment to get him. Instead, he lunged at me again. He was a lot tougher than he looked, but was still more fragile than his younger guard members were. I could hear and see Jake fighting. He was doing a lot better than I had thought would have. Arrow was still trying to get a grip on me, but I moved too much and he moved backwards again. I snapped at him a couple times, trying to bite one of his hands, but I had no such luck. A loud screeching sound coming from a vampire who just lost his face distracted the both of us. We both turned to look in the direction. But instead of taking that chance to attack me, Arrow ran. I chased him down the halls and through what was left of the doors until we were outside. He kept running, but I could tell he didn't know where he was going. I continued to chase him through the trees. "Let him go, Bella. Come back here," Sam said. "No, I will not let him go. If he gets away, this will never end. I don't think you can take him on your own. I don't have any other choice." He disagreed, but I stopped listening. I made my choice. I could tell Arrow grew confused on which direction to take. He slowed down just enough for me to catch up. He ended up making a circle and heading back toward the factory. I was a little more than a foot behind him, just close enough to get him. I jumped and landed right on his back, knocking him down. I opened my mouth and bit down, right on the back of his neck. He screamed with his face in the dirt. "Bella, please don't. We can work something out, you can live," he pleaded, but I ignored him. "I swear to it, we will leave you alone. You, the Cullens and the wolves will never hear from, or see me, or any of the Volturi again. I swear." I wanted to believe him and I almost did. I loosened my grip on his neck for a second and shifted my weight. He flipped his body over, still under me, and wrapped his hands around my throat. A faint smile returned to his lips as he tightened his grip. I knew it was a trick. The sound of Jake's voice flowed through my head as he yelled for me. Little did he know, I was prepared for that. In fact, I wanted him to do what he did. He thought he had me. His hands were just loose enough for me to still move a little. I threw my head forward and bit his face. His hands dropped from my throat to my chest, trying to push me off. He yelled and screamed again. But this time nothing he did affected me. It will not end if he is still alive, I told myself. I bit harder. When I yanked my head backwards, I pulled his jaw off. He could no longer make any sound, or beg for his life. I stared into his eyes as they filled with terror, knowing what would soon come. A strange surge filled my body that I had never felt before. Never had I wanted a death to come more than I had right then. He threatened me, my family's, and he was responsible for Edward's death. I had no remorse for what I was about to do. He tried once again to push me off, but he couldn't. I bent forward and bit his neck. With one last jerk, while staring into his blood-red eyes, I ripped his head right off. His body still shook under me as I tossed his head to the side. I continued tearing his body apart. I had killed a vampire before. In the same day even, but that was different. What I had just done was something so unlike me. To stare in the eyes of someone, or something, and smile as I tore them limb from limb was something that human Bella would never have done. In that moment, I knew, nothing would ever be the same. Not even close. The 17-year-old Bella Swan that moved from Phoenix, Arizona didn't exist anymore. The fighting had gone on for not too much longer. When I was done with Arrow, I wandered off in the forest thinking. After I was sure they didn't need me, I blocked the pack out so I could have my thoughts to myself. I was told that Alice had gone to get the pieces of Arrow. I sat on a huge rock next to a cliff for about 45 minutes. Before I had gotten tired of my own thoughts. I didn't feel guilty for what I had done, and that's what had me feeling sort of uncomfortable. I didn't really know how I should have felt. Overall it wasn't too bad. At least it wouldn't have been to the rest of the pack, but the Cullens, they would be going home without one of their family. That part was what got to me most. I couldn't process the thoughts of Edward being dead. I couldn't imagine him dying over protecting me, not after what had happened between us. I could maybe understand the arguing, but what could have happened that got him killed? Why would he have taken it that far? That is what I couldn't think about anymore. A slight pain shredded through my chest at the thoughts. That was what I did feel guilty about. Once I had released the block, I got a rush of voices celebrating the success of the fight. I started to walk my way back to where I thought everyone still was. I wasn't ready to face the Cullens yet though, but I knew there was no avoiding them. "Are you okay, Bells?" Jake asked. "Yeah, the rest of the pack is heading back to the res, I'll wait for you." "No, it's okay. I'll meet you there." I felt a bit of relief, knowing I wouldn't have to see the Cullens right then, but there was still something nagging at me that I couldn't figure out. "Are you sure?" "I don't mind." "Yeah, it's fine. I'll be there soon. I won't block you out." "Okay." I didn't feel like being in wolf form anymore, so I ran all the way back to the res. Luckily I had thought to leave an extra pair of clothes at Jake's. It didn't take too long to get back and everyone was all phased back, enjoying food Emily had just cooked. Paul had stayed behind since it was obvious he was in no shape to phase, or join the rest of us. He was excited to hear all the stories when we got there. He was also surprised to hear about me taking on Arrow myself. He was sure I would have needed help, but he also didn't think Arrow would have ran either, at least not from what he had heard about him anyways. I grabbed one of the rolls Emily had put in a basket on the table and walked outside to sit on the porch. Jake followed behind me and sat next to me on the ground. "Are sure you're okay?" he asked again in a quiet voice. "I will be," I sighed. "That was some pretty crazy stuff back there. I still can't believe you did that," he said. "What was I supposed to do, Jake?" I said quietly. "I know. I didn't fully think it through, but what else is new? I just knew I couldn't take it anymore and you guys were right. If we didn't go right then, we would have lost the chance to surprise them. Yeah, but if you would have waited 2 more minutes, we would have all gone together. Well, it worked out okay this way, didn't it? Sure. This time, what if he would have killed you? At that point I honestly didn't care. There comes a time in someone's life where you just get tired of being hunted all the time. Well, that was that time for me. But I knew, even if I would have let him kill me, you would all still fight. So, I took advantage of being close. Like I said, it worked. Next time, don't do it again. Do you expect there to be a next time? Who else is out there that would want to kill me? Actually, don't answer that." Jake laughed and put his arm around my shoulders and pulled me against him. I rested my head on his chest and sighed. I was exhausted. I hope whoever it is at least gives me a break before they come after me. After about a minute of silence, another thought occurred to me. Where were the rest of the Volturi? Jake, where were the rest of the Volturi? Huh, what do you mean? It was only Arrow there. Well, from what I heard, Edward killed Keys, that's why anyways, I don't know. I didn't really think about that. How many more where was supposed to be? I didn't see any that has those abilities you were talking about. Well, there's Jane, Alec, Marcus. Well, quite a few more. I sat there in thought for a moment, till a car unexpectedly pulled up to the house. I stood up once I recognized the car. "Carlisle," I said, walking out to meet him. "Hello, Bella," he said, closing the car door. I thought I would come over and see how Paul was doing. I heard he was injured pretty badly. "Oh, yeah, he's right in here," I said, leading him into the house. My heart was pounding hard in my chest. I wasn't sure what his reaction would be towards me after the day we had all had, but by the way he looked at me and the light smile he wore, I didn't think it was too bad. I stood in the doorway watching as Carlisle checked over Paul's injuries. Sam and I were right, broken arm, shoulder, and his knee was crushed. Luckily though, it had been healing right and there wouldn't be another incident like Jake's. Once he was finished, he asked me to go outside with him, so I did. We talked for a minute. He told me that he wasn't mad at me. I guess I was making my curiosity with that kind of obvious. "I thought for sure you would all be," I started. He rested a hand on my shoulder and I kept my eyes down on the ground. "Bella, nothing about this day gone the way we had hoped. Nothing happened that was expected. You did what you had to do." "Did I really? Did I have to kill him? Why don't I feel bad about it?" The words came out barely in a whisper. I couldn't stop the single tear that fell down my cheek. "You did what you had to do. I believe that, and so does the rest of us. He would have killed you, even if not today, he would have been back." "Do you really believe that? Honestly? And where was the rest of the Volturi? What is going to stop them from coming after me once they hear what happened?" "That's right. You didn't hear what happened before you had gotten there. The reason behind what happened to Edward." "What do you mean?" "I heard Edward was killed because he killed Keys." Carlisle laughed lightly, which I found a bit odd considering the topic. "No, Arrow killed Keys for what he had done. Us was already on a thin line with the rest of the Volturi for other reasons we don't really need to know about. Arrow had had enough of it. A fight broke out before you had gotten there. I was in the middle of trying to discuss with Arrow to stop it. Oh, another thing, I thought you could see what all the other pack members were doing while you were phased. We can. We'll when there's so much going on. It's kind of hard to see everything. Why? What happened? Well, the Volturi were all there. They were. I didn't see them. I would have known. Wouldn't I? I was confused. Well, like you said, there was so much going on. I would imagine you were focused on Arrow. I think Arrow was pretty distracted himself. I don't think he really imagined your little mind block would affect the whole pack. Wait a minute. I shook my head as I tried to process it all. All of them were there. Yes, I didn't know that either. I was quite surprised when only Arrow and Dimitri had showed up at first. Well, of course a few of the other guard members. That is what happened to Edward. He had gotten into an argument with Arrow and Dimitri went after him. Edward tried to defend himself and Emmett had to step in. Of course the other guard members got involved and Jasper tried to help. Edward and Emmett successfully stopped Dimitri, only Edward wasn't so successful. He was injured very badly. Moments after that, you came in, surprising us all. Quote, wait, so if I came in a few minutes earlier, none of that would have happened. I was even more angry with myself than words could describe. Bella, that would have happened whether you were there or not. It actually may have been worse if you did show up earlier. I can't believe that. Anyways, so when did the rest of the Volturi show up? After the pack showed up and you phased. Once you started fighting Arrow, Jane and Alec came in. When Arrow ran, that was when he realized they were greatly outnumbered. He was hopeful that between Jane and Alec, we would have all been stopped. Their abilities only worked on us, not the pack. So, it did work. What happened to Jane? Your pack leader, Sam, well, he got a hold of her. 2 of the other wolves got Alec. The rest of us all went after whoever was left. What about the rest of the Volturi though? Felix had to have been there, Marcus too. Were they involved in the fight too? Felix, yes, but I do know. She remembers seeing Marcus there now that I think about it. Maybe he did stay behind, but why? Carlisle drifted off for a moment and I took advantage of the silence to think about everything I had just heard. I knew my mind blocked the pack from Edward and I had forgotten about the other vampire in the guard who said his ability wouldn't work. But hearing it stopped Jane and Alec, that was something else. I really hadn't even known they were there. I was even more glad knowing I hadn't blocked the pack out while focusing on Arrow. I stared at the tires on the Mercedes, lost in thought. Suddenly very thing turned into a blur and I felt a tremendous weight on my brain. I had never felt something more overwhelming than I had in that moment. It was good to know that the majority of the Volturi was gone and to know they weren't able to harm the pack because of my block, but how long would it take for Marcus to prepare to get his own revenge? Of course I couldn't just assume he wouldn't. Bella, are you okay? I heard Carlisle's voice ask. Why yeah, I'm okay, I think. It's just a lot to process. How long do you think it will take for Marcus to come after me now? I had to ask. Honestly, I don't know. I don't even know that he would. He wouldn't build up a new guard and do it. Why wouldn't he? He lost the people he considered to be like his family. I know neither of you guys would sit back and let something like that happen. No, we wouldn't, but for some reason, I don't think he would do that. I think you all may be the one thing that could always get in the way of the Volturi. Your family too. Don't forget you were the original threat to the Volturi. Edward has said something about that once, I just can't remember it now. I suppose that is true. I don't know. Maybe now we will never know, but the point is now. You are okay. I'm not so sure that's as great as it sounded a few days ago. It will be better. As I said before, just don't forget who you are. It's not too late for that. Are you sure? I feel like I have already changed so much, I'm not sure I even know who I am anymore. I don't think that's true. Give it some time. Of course right now you won't know. The tea was a pretty big thing that happened today. That doesn't change who you are, just what you can do. You are not the version of yourself we all grew to love so much anymore, but you and your heart hasn't changed any. I can see that right now. He smiled as he turned to put his bag in the trunk of the car. Thank you, Carlisle. I'll keep that in mind. So, how long are you guys staying around? Not too much longer. A few more days at the most. It'll give us enough time to pack and prepare for the move. Will I get to say goodbye? I asked, looking into his eyes. Of course. We could never leave without saying goodbye to you first. Nothing has changed, Bella. We still think of you as our family. Emmett has said that, but I wasn't sure if you all still felt that way. Not after all of this. He walked over and put both of his hands on my shoulders. You are not to blame for this, Bella. You need to understand that. Okay, I will. Thanks again, Carlisle, I told him, wiping a tear from my eyes. See you soon, he said as he got in the car. I stood in the same place and watched as he drove away. I was so focused I didn't even hear as Jake walked up behind me. He put his arms around me and I jumped. Sorry, how's everything? He asked. Well, everything makes a lot more sense now, I think. Really? How so? He turned me around to face him. For one, all but one of the Volturi was there. I was so focused I didn't see them. I guess too that the reason Arrow ran was because he thought for sure that Jane and Alec's ability would have worked on the pack. When it didn't, he panicked. Was Jane the little blonde who Sam took out? His choice of words made me shiver. Thinking of Sam taking out Tiny Jane was something I was glad I missed. Powerful vampire or not, I still pictured her as a child. Yes, so who was the one that didn't show? Marcus, but Carlisle doesn't think he will want revenge, but we'll see. You don't believe him, like I can really assume anything like that anymore, I laughed. The rest of the evening was fairly calm. The guys were running around goofing off like normal. All I wanted to do was go home and take a shower, but I knew that wasn't going to happen anytime soon. Charlie and Billy came over to Emily and Sam's once they were done fishing. I was a little worried. I hadn't seen Charlie since I phased in front of him. I didn't know what his reaction would have been. When they first got back, he was laughing with Billy when he was walking through the door. I was sitting alone on the couch, staring at the wall when he sat down on the couch next to me. He had a worried expression on his face and I didn't know what to expect. So, should I be concerned about what happened today? He asked right away. What do you mean? Hall's P. Reddy beat up and Jake doesn't look too much better. You've got cuts on your wrist too. Well, at least I think they were cuts. I never seen them before, but they look old, he pointed out. I never even noticed the cuts. Probably not something you really want to know, Dad, I told him, and I felt a bit guilty. Actually, I do want to know, not now, but someday. I'm still taking in what you are now and what I'm assuming they are too. He said, gesturing to the guys in the kitchen. Yeah, it's something I'm still getting used to too. He wrapped an arm around my shoulder and gently hugged me for a second. As long as you are okay now, I guess that's what is most important. I know it had to be something pretty big though to leave them in such bad shape, he laughed nervously. Something like that, I laughed too. If only he really knew what all existed in the world. I don't think he could handle that all so soon. Finding out that your daughter has somehow been turned into a werewolf, well, that is a big thing. Realizing that all the huge guys she hangs out with are too and that your best friend hid it from you the entire time, that's pushing his limit, I think. But, finding out that they're vampires. Some you had even gotten to know and that your daughter had dated, that's a little too much. Like he said though, someday he will find out and that day will be a crazy one I'm in no hurry to get to. About an hour after Charlie and Billy had returned, everyone started slowly drifting home for some much-needed rest. They are all able to enjoy the fact that it was all over and they were finally going to be able to catch up on sleep. Everyone except for me, I knew wouldn't be able to sleep, but that didn't stop me from trying. I had decided to head home with Charlie and he was happy to have me home for once. As soon as I got home, I went upstairs and took a very long and very hot shower. I decided to go downstairs and watch whatever sports game Charlie had on TV. He was surprised that I was down there, but happy. I could tell from the smile on his face. It was boring of course and didn't hold my attention, but it was nice to relax. Once he had fallen asleep, I decided to go upstairs and lay down. I thought about maybe reading since it was something I hadn't done in what seemed like forever. I went through 3 different books before I decided that nothing would take my mind off everything that had gone on. Everything reminded me of the events in the past, good and bad. I then decided that maybe sometime in the next couple of days, I would have to take a trip to the bookstore. I turned out the lights and laid in bed for a few hours before I was finally able to drift off to sleep. I woke up several times to different nightmares. They were mostly of the fighting between vampires and wolves. Very vivid and violent. When the sun finally rose, I gave up and went downstairs to make breakfast. I made pancakes, bacon and eggs for Charlie. I didn't have much of an appetite, but once he came downstairs, I made myself eat a little bit. After asking me if I was okay several times, Charlie finally gave up and went to work. It was quiet for most of the morning, until Jake came over. I felt better once I was in his arms on the couch, watching a movie and having some much-needed time, but something still felt weird. I knew it would take time, as Carlyle had said, to feel better about the events of the day before, and I could only hope he was right. One specific detail left me feeling wrong. Edward. Thoughts of him were what kept me up all night. In between the nightmares of battle, I had a few of him being killed. I loved him once. It was safe to say that a part of me always would. Thinking of him being gone forever, it just wasn't right. Something felt wrong with the world. Being happy that the threats were gone, at least just for a while, felt wrong. The whole situation left me wondering. I felt myself getting completely lost in thoughts about it more than I wanted to. Jake knew there was something wrong and he knew what it was, so he didn't bother asking. He just did what he could to make me feel better. He tried to keep me distracted. He would put on all of my favorite movies and even offered to let me read him some parts of my favorite books, as we had talked about once. He wanted me to help him understand why I loved the books that I did. I just wasn't in the mood. He had even rented the movie we had gone to see in theaters a while back. Face Punch. While that was entertaining for a while, making fun of it the way he had before, it eventually ended. We went to the res for a while. He helped Sam work on his truck and I sat in the living room with Emily. She talked about many different things, from different recipes she wanted to try, to being happy that she didn't have to worry about Sam so much, at least not for a while. I kept in on the conversations, but she too knew something was wrong. After a while I decided it was time to head back home and get dinner started for Charlie. I invited Jake to come over. He said that Charlie and I needed to spend more time together. I didn't argue. I put on my happy face before I went inside, but it didn't fool him. Thought I was starting to wonder if anything ever really had. Once dinner was done, eaten and cleaned up, I said goodnight and went upstairs. I could feel it was going to be another repeated night, but I tried to sleep anyways. I woke up after about an hour of sleep from another nightmare. I was glad they weren't the screaming kind like I used to have. These just had me waking up painfully gasping for air. I was okay once I realized I was at home in my bed. It was really just that hard to believe everything had turned out the way it had. While I was sitting up in bed, leaning my head against the headboard thinking things over, I heard a tap on my window. I smiled as I threw the blankets back, thinking it was Jake. I had started thinking maybe I would get some better sleep if he stayed over. But I wasn't prepared for what I was about to see outside my window. Edward, I gasped in shock. You think I could come in? He asked, sitting on the branch of the tree outside my window. Oh, of course, I said, throwing the window open and standing back as he jumped in. What the hell? I started, but words failed me. What? He asked, looking at me with a hint of his crooked smile. You're supposed to be dead. Would you rather I be? Because I can arrange that, he said, gesturing out the window, and I punched his arm. Oh, I forget you're a bit stronger now. He laughed, rubbing the spot I had hit. What happened? They said you were killed, but I'm not. He laughed again. Will you stop joking around? I'm serious. I know and I'm sorry. It's just the look on your face just now. If I didn't know any better, I have never seen you so white. Well, when you think someone is dead and they show up at your window in the middle of the night, it kind of has that effect. True, you have a point there. He moved over and sat down on the edge of my bed. If I didn't know any better, I would swear I was dreaming. He was acting as if nothing happened. Edward, would you mind explaining what happened? Oh right, well, you know most of what happened in the fight, right? Dimitri didn't kill me. He attacked me and I fought him and Felix. I got hurt pretty badly, even after Emmett stepped in to help, so I needed a few days to heal, but I'm okay now. Apparently I had missed something. He was alive, standing perfectly normal in my bedroom as he had so many times before. So many thoughts were rushing around in my head, but only one stood out. It was something during the conversation with Carlyle. Edward wasn't so successful. He was injured very badly. He never said he had died, just injured badly. How could I have missed that? How did I not notice his lack of mourning until that moment? I was very frustrated, but I decided I would get back to that later. You're acting like nothing has happened. I thought you were dead because of me. I have been moping around here, driving people crazy while believing I was responsible for your death, and you show up like it's no big deal. I'm sorry. Really, I am. I don't know how to act really. I heard you killed Arrow, he said, looking a bit surprised. Yes, another thing that has been bugging me, I told him, looking towards the other side of the room. Well, I'm not exactly happy that you did it, but I'm glad you are okay. I wish you would have let someone else do it though. Still worried about me being able to protect myself, huh? Obviously, I can handle it. I was the only one who had the chance to. I was the closest. It was my life he was threatening, and also, I was to believe he was responsible for your death. Another thing that was a lie. I don't know what to think anymore. Bella, please. Edward, it's okay. There has just been so much. I don't know. It's just hard. I don't need any explanations. Just knowing you are alive and okay, I'm happy with that. So you were pretty upset. Yes, I said, folding my arms over my chest and sitting down on the corner of my bed next to him. I'm sorry. He kept his eyes on the floor. It's okay. We sat there in silence for a few minutes. I didn't know what to say, or where to even start. The last time I had seen him, he was begging me to attack him. Now what was he doing? The thought that he had truly lost his mind made more sense than anything else did. Look, Edward, Bella, when I say I'm sorry, it's for everything. We spoke at the exact moment. I didn't understand what he meant, but I was hoping he wasn't going back to blaming himself again. What do you mean? I'm sorry for acting like an idiot. For being so hot and cold. As some people say, one minute I was okay, the next I don't know, losing it. Like I said, I just don't know how to be around you anymore. I love you, I always will, but I know I can't have you. Not anymore. You're with Jacob now. I understand that, and well, I'm sorry I didn't accept that like I told you I always would have. After all, it's not like imprinting was on your list of things to do that day. He laughed slightly, still looking at the floor. Well, I didn't expect you to just sit down and take it, but I didn't expect you to act the way you did either. I don't know how a person should act in a situation like that, so I can't really say anything. I don't even know how I would act in a situation like that. Accepting that you didn't love me when you first moved away. That was hard, and when I did it, nothing felt real anymore, so I don't expect it to be easy for you. Don't think that just because of the imprinting I don't love and care about you anymore, 'cause I do. I'm just not in love with you the way I was. It's hard to explain, and I don't even know how to. I still don't even expect you to accept it, but I want you to be okay. I want you to be happy somehow. Some way, and I believe you will be in time. You are still way too generous, he laughed. You should be angry with me, you should kick me right out of your room, which I have no business being in anymore anyways. I just had to see you. Friends can do this, but that's all this is, friendship. I smiled and put a hand on his that was sitting on his lap. I'm not going anywhere anytime soon, and neither will you. Well, besides moving, but we can work around that. I still want you in my life. Is that too selfish of me? You can say no. Of course I wouldn't say no. You should know me better than that. I had a thought earlier though. He paused for a moment before looking out of the window. I guess we both should have been more specific in what we wanted, because I guess, in a way, we both got what we wanted. What are you talking about? I wanted you stay alive, keep your soul. Be able to have children one day if you wanted. You wanted to live forever, with me of course. But we don't always get everything we want. You are alive, breathing, and, as long as you chose, you can stay this way forever. We it all, just differently. Huh, I never thought of it that way. E sat there in silence for a little longer until he stood up and started walking towards the window. Carlisle said we will be leaving soon. I hope you will stop by the house and say goodbye before we do. Of course, I would hate it if you left before I got the chance to thank you all and to see you one last time. Maybe it won't be the last time. Who knows, maybe we can visit, or you can visit us wherever we go. I would like that. I will miss you all like crazy. I walked over towards him by the window. He reached out with one arm and put a hand slightly on my waist. He kissed me quickly and softly on my forehead, before ducking out the window and disappearing into the night. While walking over to my bed to go back to sleep, I felt something crinkle in the pocket of my sweatpants. When I reached my hand in, I pulled a small piece of paper. It read, "Be happy, my Bella. No matter what happens in our lives, as long as you are alive and happy, it makes everything worth it. I will always be there if you need me to be. Edward." I was able to sleep peacefully for once and wake in the morning with no nightmares. When I awoke the next morning, I felt more rested than I had in a long time. I even had a smile on my face, which was a shock even to me. A few moments before I opened my eyes, I suddenly knew I wasn't alone. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I was a little afraid to open my eyes. I sniffed the air a little to see if I could catch a scent, and my smile returned, whiter than before, once I realized who it was. "Good morning, beautiful," Jake said as he moved to sit on the bed next to me, bent down, and kissed my lips softly. Good morning," I said, still smiling as I wrapped my arms around him, pulling him back in for another kiss. When I finally released him, he laughed quietly. "I take it you're feeling better today." "Most definitely," I said, opening my eyes to see his. "What's changed?" "Everything. Everything is exactly the way it is supposed to be." "How's that, if you don't mind me asking?" "Not at all. Everyone survived the fight. The Volturi aren't going to be coming after me. You and I can finally enjoy our relationship the way we should have been able to from the beginning. Charlie knows what I am and has accepted it. Life is good." I smiled again. "Everyone. What about?" He started hesitantly. Apparently it was a misunderstanding. "Wow. Well, I never thought I would say this, but I'm glad to hear that." "How'd you find out?" "He showed up last night, scaring the shit out of me." "Oh really?" His tone held a bit of anger and possessiveness to it. "Oh Jake," I laughed. "He was here for a minute or two, filled me in on the obvious details I missed and let me know he was going to be okay." "Well, I guess that's good." I laughed and as I reached for his hand and pulled his face down to mine for another kiss. It was almost crazy how different it felt once I was relaxed and able to enjoy the way his lips on mine made me feel. I never wanted to let him go. He started to pull back way too soon and I held my grip on him. He laughed again against my lips and gently pried my fingers out of his hair. "You know, if you do that again, I may not be able to control myself." "That's sort of what I'm going for." I smiled. Jake looked a little shocked and he cleared his throat before speaking. "Yeah, well, I don't think Charlie will appreciate that very much." He smiled. My eyes widened. Somehow I managed to forget I was even in my room, let alone my house. That brought me to a question I should have asked first. "Exactly why are you here?" "Not that I mind, of course." His smile faded a little. "I've been worried about you the last couple of days. I wanted to check up on you, maybe take you out and get your mind off things." "Apparently that is no longer an issue." He laughed. "Oh, well, thank you. We could still go out." I propped myself up on my elbows. "What all did you have in mind?" The afternoon Jake had planned was wonderful. It was almost as though I was awake for the first time in months. Everything seemed brighter, smelled so much better, and even felt better. The weight of the stress I had been holding was more than I had even imagined. With it gone, I felt like I was actually able to live again. It was amazing. To start the afternoon, Jake took me to a restaurant for lunch. It was nice to spend time alone, and though the place was crowded with people, it was only him and me in the room. After lunch, he took me to some book fair thing that was going on in Port Angeles. They had a great selection of books and I even bought a couple. I thought it was pretty perfect considering I had already planned on getting some new ones. Even Jake was enjoying himself. I couldn't keep my eyes off of his amazing smile. It was something that I hadn't seen much of. After the book fair, We headed back towards Forks, except he turned and went towards La Push instead. Where are we going? I asked, a little confused. The res. Not that I have a problem with that, but why? You'll see. Jake. It's nothing bad, he laughed. I promise. Okay. It was around 5 o'clock in the evening and I was a tad bit nervous at what he could have had planned. The rest of the day was normal and very enjoyable, so I had no idea what to expect. When we pulled up to his house and it was quiet, I was curious, but I soon leered. Ned I had nothing to worry about when he brought up watching a movie, or so I thought. We sat on the couch, my head on his chest, and watched some romantic comedy. It was kind of a lame movie, but I didn't care. I was just glad to finally have some time with Jake alone, with no distractions, but as the movie grew closer to the end, I noticed him looking at the clock several times. It was starting to make me feel nervous again. Once the movie was over, I excused myself to the bathroom just as he looked at the clock again. When I was done in the bathroom, I went out to realize I was alone in the living room. Whatever Jake was doing, I figured he would be back in soon, so I decided to sit on the couch and wait for him. As I walked over to the couch, I noticed there was a single rose petal lying on the cushion I was sitting on. I was sure it wasn't there before. I turned to look behind me to see if I could get an idea of where it came from, when I noticed there was another one on the floor next to the front door. Curiously, I opened the front door to see if Jake was outside and ended up finding another petal on the porch. I walked out looking farther to find more. I followed a trail of petals, which I quickly noticed was leading me down the path that Jake uses to get to the beach. I kept following them, growing more and more curious. Once I got to the end of the line of trees, I could see the opening to the beach. When I looked a little farther, I could see Jake standing on the shore with his back to me. I shook my head as I smiled at his sneakiness. I hated surprises, but it was as something very unexpected and I found myself anxious to see what he had planned. Once I started walking again, I realized the petals did in fact lead all the way to where Jake was standing, which just happened to be next to the tree we somehow always ended up at. I started laughing, until I seen the portable CD player that was sitting on one of the branches. He turned to face me, I looked at him suspiciously, and he smiled, which oddly caused my stomach to flutter. He moved closer to me, grabbing my face gently and kissed me. My brain activity started to fuzz in and out like a bad reception and took a minute to regain my focus. I pulled away a little, looking him in the eyes. You know I hate surprises, I told him. Yeah, but you love me. I laughed. Yes, I definitely do. I kissed him again, but that time he pulled away. He leaning over and unrolled a blanket to lie out over the sand. He pulled me down to sit next to him. This was very unexpected, I told him. Is it really that surprising that I could do something like this? He laughed. No, that's not what I meant. Well, even though you hate surprises, I had to do something for you, for the exact reason you said this morning. Everything is as it should be. I smiled as I rested my head on his shoulder, watching the sun start to set. I let out a comfortable sigh. It definitely is. As soon as I was starting to relax, Jake stood up, pulling me with him. What is it? I asked. Oh, nothing. He smiled, clearly up to something. As we were standing there, his body shifted a little and with a click, music started to fill the air. I looked at him suspiciously again. He reached for my hand as he wrapped his free arm around my waist, the other still holding my hand. I suddenly realized what he was doing. Jake, you know I can't dance. Well, I can't really either, he laughed. So we're equal. I gave in and rested my head on his shoulder again. I looked out towards the waves of the ocean as we slowly swayed to the music, and I watched as the sky turned a beautiful pink and orange with the sunset. I couldn't have thought of anything more perfect. It was exactly what we needed. A while after the sun had set and we were done with dancing, we decided to lay on the blanket and enjoy the beautiful, oddly clear night sky. It was amazing how many stars you could see from that spot. The music still played softly, and we relaxed in the comfortable silence we so rarely got since all the chaos had started. I had my head on his chest, alternating between looking at the stars and watching the waves in the dark as the moon shone on them. I was in a sort of trance, listening to the sound of his heartbeat as my head would rise and fall with each breath he took. For once, I had just stopped thinking altogether. I didn't want anything to ruin it. The sound of Jake's voice, which had vibrated through his chest, startled me and my body jerked a little. It's getting late, maybe we should get you back home. As much as I didn't want to, he was right. Charlie still wasn't used to everything that had been going on and he always feared what I was doing when I wasn't home. I didn't have to be a mind reader to Kay. Now that was what the look that spread across his face meant every time I left the house. After everything, I wanted to spare him whatever stress I could. I sighed in agreement. It was a silent ride home and a thought occurred to me. But I kept silent about it until the last minute. Jake kept up the whole romantic thing and held my hand as he walked me to the door. He seemed a bit awkward and while I found it a little cute, I had a hard time fighting the laughter, but managed it. When we came to a stop outside my front door, we stood there looking into each other's eyes for a moment before he leaned in to kiss me. I had no idea why it still surprised me, but every kiss was still more amazing than the last. My whole world shook and my knees even shook a little with it. He smiled as he wrapped his arms around me, pulling me into a hug when I decided to put my thought into action. Come back later tonight, I whispered softly into his ear. He pulled back slightly and looked at me with confusion and curiosity. I leaned in, wrapping my arms around his neck. I know you can sneak in without Charlie knowing. Yeah, so. He looked so cute when he was confused. I laughed softly. Well, it would just complete the night if I could fall asleep in your arms. He smiled and kissed me lightly. You don't have to tell me twice. About 2 hours had passed before he came back. It gave me not time to talk to Charlie about my day, which he actually wanted to hear about, and to take a shower. I was sitting down on my bed, looking through one of my new books when he tapped on the window. I set the book down and walked quickly to open the window for him. His first step in, he wrapped his arms around me and the warmth instantly comforted me. At first he was unsure about staying, worrying a little too much about Charlie randomly coming into my room. I laughed a little, explaining that he never did that, unless I gave him reasons to. I pulled the blankets back and laid down, pulling him with me and snuggled up close to him once he was comfortable. We talked for hours, about anything and everything. The past, the present and the future, things we never really got to discuss before. He had some questions for me, as I did for him. It was nice to have a relationship with complete openness and honesty, not one with constant questions and concerns. Jake kind of surprised me when he said that, since the imprinting. He keeps expecting to wake up and realize it was all a dream. Is this the kind of things you dreamt about? Dreams of me falling in love with you and then having to fight to the death. Because some vampire rulers wanted me dead. Quote, he laughed. No, not exactly. It just doesn't seem real. For a while there I was sure I was going to lose you to him. You were more more determined to be changed and then I heard you and him talking about marriage. I was positive then that it was over, that I had lost everything. Kissing you was my one last hope and sometimes doesn't seem real that was all it took. He was staring at the wall straight ahead of him, seeming to be far away in thought. Yeah, who would have known it was one kiss that would change everything? One kiss that would allow me to open my eyes and my heart to you, that lead to the wall being dropped and the flood to pour in. Something like that. I don't know exactly how to explain it. I just know that, since Edward came back, I thought it felt so right, like everything was finally the way it was supposed to be. But in truth, it wasn't. What I thought was just my own doubt in his love for me. Was my mind trying to come to terms with what I really felt was right? I think I was starting to realize my confusion that I told myself that loving Edward was right, so I wanted the change to come quicker. Once I was changed, there would be no more confusion, it would be too late to go back. I was happy with him, I really was, but I think I knew somewhere deep down, that I knew I could happier. I sighed heavily. I'm still not sure how it all happened, or what exactly I was feeling and when. I just know that I was running out of time and I needed to just make a decision. I went with what I knew. What I thought my heart ached for. Not even realizing that ache disappeared long before Edward had even come back. I'm sorry for that. No need to apologize, he laughed. It's done, it's over with. I love you and I know you love me, that is all that is important. It just sucks that I don't get enjoyment in the thought of wanting to rub it in that damn vamp's face and blast it in his thoughts. I was really looking forward to it too, but he kind of sucked the fun out of it. I laughed at his choice of words and hugged myself closer to him. Yes, I couldn't be happier with the way things have worked out. Jake wrapped his arms around me and some point after that I had fallen asleep. It was a wonderful feeling having him lay there with me, and I knew that I was going to make it happen as much as I possibly could. I was pretty sure I wouldn't get any arguments from his side. Morning came quicker than I wanted it to. I tried to get him to stay longer, but he had some TNGs to get done that day and wanted to get an early start on it so he could get done earlier. I laughed and forced my hands to release him. I had no idea why he kept insisting on using my window, even during the day when Charlie wasn't home, but all he could say was it was easier and he liked it better. It took more energy than it should have pulling myself out of bed to say goodbye to him, and I hated the fact that I had to wake up and watch him go at all. I hugged him tightly, kissed him goodbye and watched him jump out of my window. I was just turning to walk back over to my bed, when I hear the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. It took all of 2 seconds to realize it was Charlie's cruiser and that for some reason he came back home. I turned back around quickly to see Jake frozen in the spot he had landed in. Just barely standing up all the way, with his eyes glued to the car. I held my breath as Charlie got out and rolled his eyes. "Use the door next time, Jake," he said, as he walked up to the house. "Oh, okay, Charlie," Jake replied, just as shocked as I was. I let out a gush of air as Jake looked up at me. I smiled nervously and shrugged, then watched him run off, shaking his head. In that moment, I realized that there was no wondering anymore. I was positive nothing had ever gotten past Charlie. After Jake had left, I was a little hesitant to go downstairs. I wanted to wait until after Charlie had left, but I had a feeling that he was waiting for me. I was also curious as to why he was home anyways. I decided to suck it up and see what was going on. When I got downstairs, it was really quiet. I rounded the corner into the kitchen and came to a stop when Charlie was leaning against the corner deep in thought. I took a deep breath and let it out loudly to let him know I was there. I walked to the refrigerator to get some juice. "Hey Bells," Charlie said. I was a little taken back by his tone. I expected some instant lecture about Jake staying over, but he seemed really calm. "Hey Dad." I looked at him curiously, as I reached for a cup in the cabinet. When he didn't say anything, I decided to keep talking. The room was filled with awkward silence, at least it was for me. "So, what are you doing home?" "I left some papers here that I needed for an investigation that I was going over last night." "Oh, yeah, there was an old factory about 30 minutes out of town that mysteriously burned down. The previous owner's family lives in town, so that's why we were called to it." I wasn't sure what to say to that. I wasn't aware that they had caught the whole building on fire. But I suppose with the fires they started for the vampires, it was a lot easier to cover up. I assumed anyways. I was deep in thought on the situation when I realized he was talking again. What the cause was and there's no evidence, but we're just assuming it was some kids were messing around and it got out of hand. Not really much else we can do since it was going to be torn down in a few months anyways. "Yeah, well that's good. I guess. Was anyone injured?" "Nope." I nodded and went back to pouring my juice. He was looking at me curiously, like he had a question he wasn't sure he should ask. "What?" "Nothing. I'm just never mind. I probably don't want to know." He laughed nervously while scratching the back of his head. "I'm just glad to see you a lot more relaxed lately and that whatever happened you're home and safe." I smiled. "Me too. So does that mean whatever was going on is done?" "Yep. For now," I mentally added. Good. Well, I should get back to work." "All right." He nodded and started walking towards the door. He must have still been deep in thought because he forgot his papers again on the counter. "Hey Dad." "Yeah, your paperwork," I told him, pointing to the counter. "Right." He laughed. "And Dad, thanks for the Jake thing. I swear he only slept over. I trust you Bells. You're smart and you've proven you are a very responsible young lady. You may not make the best of choices, but you're young, we all have been there. I just want you to be careful. I love you, Bells, and I just want the best for you. Thanks, Dad. I love you too. Okay. Now don't go making me regret it. I won't. Alright. See you later. Bye. I smiled as I turned back to my juice. After Charlie had left, I made some breakfast and thought about what I had wanted to do for the day. There was only one thing that popped into my head continuously, and I gave in. I knew it was something I had to do eventually. But to say I was nervous was putting it lightly. I went upstairs to get dressed and was a little irritated with my lack of clothes. Everything was either too small, or just uncomfortably smaller. The only clothes that really fit me since my change had been shredded while I was learning to control my phasing. I realized that I must have gotten a little bigger since the first start of the phasing. Because the clothes that fit then I couldn't get over my hips. Threw around clothes from all drawers, causing my room to look like a tornado had hit it, and then finally found a pair of pants. It was old pair of my mom's that had somehow been mixed in with my clothes when I moved. They were snug, but they fit. They were 2 sizes bigger than what I was wearing before, which I was a little shocked by. As for shirts, I just wore one of my bigger t-shirts under one of my nicer sweaters. I made a mental note that I really needed to go shopping. I was definitely nervous by the time I got into my truck. I loved the Cullens. I knew always would, but I felt horrible for what had happened. The only ones I had talked to about it all was Edward, Emmett and Carlisle. I couldn't be sure how he others would react, and that was what scared me the most. I should have talked to them from the beginning, but I was too much of a chicken to do so. I feared their rejection, which is something I knew I deserved. But in the back of my head, I knew that wasn't what I would get from them. However, I knew our relationships would never go back to the way they used to be. I was now pretty much one of their enemies. I thought over all different reactions they could have on the drive over there. I think my biggest problem was that even after everything, I was afraid I would lose them. They were my family before the imprint and phasing stuff started, and a major part of me felt like I betrayed them. I still loved them, and I'm sure they still felt the same way about me, but was it enough? Would they forgive me for just taking off? Would they still consider me part of their family? Did I deserve to be? Was any of that even possible? Those were the questions that ran through my mind repeatedly. While driving down the long winding road that led to the Cullen house, my heartbeat accelerated to the point I could see my chest pounding with it. As I got closer, I forced myself to get a grip and remain calm. Otherwise I was sure they would hear my heartbeat before they even caught my scent, or the sound of my truck. As I was pulling up to the house, it was really quiet, and for a moment I thought I was too late. I heard the faint sound of my old best friend's voice, and I could have sworn I heard her say, "So you're sure she is strong enough?" That worried and confused me a little, but I took a deep breath and got out of the truck anyways. When I made the turn around the truck, I saw Alice walking out of the front door and walking very slowly towards me. Jasper, Emmett, and Esme were standing on the steps, and I could see Edward through the window. I could have sworn he was smiling. Hey, Alice," I said as she was still walking slowly up to me. I was a little unsure about her movements. She never walked slowly. Even a fast human pace was sometimes hard for her. I was positive that it meant nothing good. I was just about to open my mouth again as she stopped in front of me, but instead I was shocked when I received a quick punch to my right arm. "Ow, what was that for?" I asked out of reflex, though I was pretty sure I knew the reason. "No visits, no calls, no nothing. I can't have visions of you anymore, and I had no idea what was going on with you. I hated it. You can't just do that to your best friend Bella, it's just mean. I should be furious with you. Alice, I should be. Does that mean you're not?" I pulled at whatever strings of hope that I had left. She folded her arms across her chest and looked off to the side of me. "No," she said, pouting. "Really?" I smiled. "Alice, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry to all of you. What I did was wrong, and you're right. I shouldn't have done that to my best friend, or my family. I don't know, but it was wrong." "Yes, it was, and no, I'm not mad. Just a little sad," she said, still not looking at me. I threw myself forward and wrapped my arms around her, almost knocking her down. It wasn't something I was used to. "Ugh, you stink, Bella." "Yeah, you don't smell so great either, Alice, but deal with it," I laughed and she wrapped her arms around me. I missed you, Bella. Please don't ever do that to me again. I won't, as long as you can forgive me. I will never do that to you again. She pulled back and looked at my face. Okay, I forgive you. She smiled and tightened her grip on me again. Come on, the others are anxious to see you, she said, grabbing my and pulling me back into the house. That was the Alice I loved to see. On the walk over, I was hoping the rest of the Cullens could be so forgiving. Oh Bella, it is so good to see you, Esme said as I walked up the steps. She gave a hug and I could tell she was holding her breath. It's really good to see you too. I've missed you all so much, I told her. As soon as she let go, Emmett walked over to me, eyeing me with curiosity. Hey Bella, glad you came. He smiled hugely before giving me a hug that I was sure if I was the old Bella, he would have broken me in half. Me too. Emmett, I was barely able to breathe. Yeah, I may be stronger, but you're crushing me. Oh, he laughed. Sorry. He let go of me with a laugh. No problem. I smiled. My emotions started to get the best of me once I realized they weren't so mad at me. Tears filled my eyes, threatening to spill over, but I fought to keep them back. When Emmett stepped away, Jasper was standing behind him looking at me funny. I couldn't figure out what his expression was, but I just stood there looking at him. I was never really close to him, but I felt I owed him an apology too. Hey Jasper, I said. Nervous for some reason. I'm glad you're here too, Bella. There is no reason to be nervous around me. I see you as family just as everyone else does and I missed having you around too. I smiled. I wasn't sure if giving him a hug was necessary or not, but I did anyways. When I pulled away, he laughed. What? Well, the good thing is, you no longer have to worry about me wanting your blood, he said, making a face of disgust and then smiled. Well, that's a relief. I laughed again, no longer nervous. After we were done, we walked back into the house and I saw Edward leaning against the tailing to the stairs wearing my favorite smile. Hello Bella. Hi Edward. I just stood there for a moment with him, both smiling at each other. I still cared about him tremendously and I knew that would never change. You never stop caring about your first love and that was exactly what he was. Thinking, at that moment, about the events that had taken place, I would only change one major thing. I would have changed the way I had dealt with the situation. As soon as I knew what was going, I shouldn't have avoided the truth and letting him know. It was wrong and I would never forgive myself for it. He did deserve better than that, they all did. I also realized, while tearing my eyes away from him and looking at the rest of the family, that just because the pack didn't like them, or agree with them, doesn't mean that I had to feel that way too. Also, just because vampires were the reason werewolves existed, doesn't mean I was right in blaming them directly. If it wasn't the Cullens, it would have been some nomads that would come around, causing them to phase. Maybe I wouldn't have changed, but well, that was just how life worked. Things would always happen out of my control. It was just a fact in life that I had to deal with. I was suddenly distracted from my thoughts when Carlisle walked downstairs. Hello Bella, it's good to see you. Hi Carlisle, it's good to see you too. Now his reaction was one I was the most nervous about. He seemed to act so differently since the day it had all changed and I had so many questions that I had no idea where or when to start asking them. Carlisle, I'm sore. No apologies needed Bella, he said with a smile. This whole situation has been hard and confusing. We don't blame you for any of it. There is no one to blame for it. He put his hand on my shoulder and pulled me into a half hug. His words crumbled what little was left of the barrier holding the tears back and they poured out like a broken dam. You guys are too forgiving, I said with an odd sound that was a sob mixed with a laugh. I left you all with no explanation. No, nothing. I just left. You don't do that to your family. I took a deep breath and wiped the tears away. I have to apologize because I feel horrible for it all. After everything you have done for me, I owed you more than that. Even after the way I treated you, you still helped me with the Volturi. I'm sorry. I love you guys and I hope even though I'm not completely who I was before, you will still accept me as a part of your family, or at least a friend. Oh, of course Bella, Esme said as she pulled me into a hug. No matter what, you are still a part of this family. We all agree on that. In fact, It was even Edward who brought us all together to make sure of that the other night. You couldn't help becoming what you are now, no more than we could help what we are. She smiled at me and kissed the top of my head. When I looked around at the family, I saw the smiles on all of their faces, and I knew what she had said was right, and I couldn't help but smile. It was then that I realized someone was missing. "Hey, where is Rosalie?" "Right here," she called as she came downstairs. She looked irritated and I braced myself for the worst. She came to a stop in front of me with her arms folded over her chest, looking me up and down. Hey Rosalie," I stuttered. "When are you going to start calling me Rose like the rest of the family?" she asked, and I looked at Emmett, who had a smile on his face. I could only assume that was a good thing. Right now. Good." She didn't move and she kept looking at me. "At least you didn't change too much, and it's good that you're a little more durable now." She paused for a minute, looking like she was thinking over something. "Look, I don't hate you, Bella. We've been over that, so loosen up. I just don't know what to say about everything. My opinions keep changing so often that I end up just contradicting myself. You know I never approved of you wanting to become one of us, and well, I guess," she paused again and sighed. "If that damn mutt, no offense, would have just kept his paws off of you, none of this would have even happened." "Rosé," Edward sighed, looking a little nervous. "Hold on, damn it, I'm trying to say something, it's just not easy," she told him. She was obviously struggling with whatever she was trying to say. Edward looked slightly amused by it. "Okay, let me try this again. Just because you are with those dogs now, doesn't mean you shouldn't keep in contact. I was an idiot ND just when I felt like I was finally getting to know you and that I wanted that to happen, you end up having to leave us. I don't want to miss out on that. I still feel like in some way you are my sister, and I would very much like it to stay that way." I was honestly shocked by what she had said. Her accepting me into the family would have been shocking to hear, but that was just wow. "Really?" I asked once she seemed like she was done. "Yes, I mean that." My eyes watered up again and I wanted to hug her, but I wasn't sure if I should, more unsure than I was with Jasper. I almost took a step forward, but I stopped myself. "Oh, come here," she said, using her normal tone and reaching her arms out. I pushed myself against her and wrapped my arms around her. "Thank you, Rose. That means so much to me." It was silent for a moment before Alice spoke up. "Hey, so, I wasn't sure if you all would have been up to it before, but now I think it would be a wonderful idea," she told everyone, smiling brightly. "I agree," Edward sighed, pushing himself off of the wall and walking closer to us all. "What is it, Alice?" Carlisle asked. "There's a thunderstorm coming in about an hour." She was still smiling and I couldn't help but smile too. "Awesome," Emmett yelled, slapping Jasper on the back. "Let's do it." "Bella, would you like to join us?" Esme asked, with a hopeful look on her face that even if I were to disagree, I would have changed my mind. "Of course," I said, and we all laughed. "So how hard do you think you can hit the ball now, Bella?" Emmett asked as everyone scattered to get ready. I'm not really sure. But I bet a lot better than before." We both laughed. Once everyone was ready, we all piled into the vehicles and left to the clearing. When we arrived, I stood in the middle and watched while they got everything all set up. I couldn't help the smile that formed on my face as I looked at them, my family, as they were all enjoying themselves. While watching them, I was suddenly hit with a wave of memories of everything that had happened since the first time I had been in that spot with them for the exact same reason. It seemed like so long ago. First the encounter with James, Laurent and Victoria, which left me running for my life and in fear of my family's lives. Then several months after that, there was the fight with Victoria and the newborns because of James's death. Not to mention all of the preparations for the fight. It actually seemed like a different lifetime, as if I was watching it through someone else's eyes. I was so sure with every single one of those situations I would never be able to be there enjoying myself the way it was. "Bella," Alice called, interrupting my thoughts. "Are you ready?" "Definitely," I told her, running over to join them. The game was amazing. The guys fought like always. Rose somehow managed to get hit in the head with the ball and she kicked Emmett's ass for it. I was on a team with Edward, Emmett, and Alice, while Rose, Carlisle, Esme, and Jasper were on the other. They tried to argue a little, but when I had them convinced I was still weaker than them, they settled. I couldn't run as fast as they could. But unless I was willing to burst into a wolf to run bases and play the rest of the game naked, I just had to deal with it. I was still surprised at how well I did. Sure, I could take on a vampire in a fight, but again as wolf. Things were much different. We played for about an hour and a half until the storm passed through and the game ended with a score that was pretty close. Our team ended up winning. The drive back to the house was a lot louder than the ride there from all of the excitement. Once we were back at the house, we all sat around talking for a little bit, still laughing and having fun, mostly at my expense. Emmett kept trying to find different ways to test my new inhuman abilities. I was just glad he didn't ask me to phase. Hours seemed to pass by too quickly. Once the sun started to dim a light, I realized that no matter how badly I wanted to stay, it was about time for me to head home. I had already promised them several times that since they decided to stay for another week, I would definitely be visiting them again. You better stick to that promise, Bella, Alice told me, glaring at me, which caused me to laugh. I promise, Alice, I will never stay away from you guys again. If you ever suspect that I might, I give you full permission to hunt me down, I told her. You better believe I will do that too. They all walked me out to my truck as we said our goodbyes. Before I turned to get into my truck, an idea popped into my head and I wasn't sure if I would regret it or not, but I was willing to take that chance. Hey Alice, I had a thought about something. What is it? Well, I was wondering if you would like to go shopping with me once more before you go. Oh my, Bella, are you actually volunteering? Yes, I have a feeling I may regret it, but I need new clothes. With the growing and well, most of them got shredded too, I'm almost out. Of course, you don't have to ask me twice. And I promise, I won't get too carried away, but only cause you volunteered. She smiled and gave me a hug. All right, sounds good to me. I'll call you tomorrow. Jake won't mind, will he? She asked, a little unsure. I hadn't thought about that. I was already worried about the conversation we would have about me spending the day with the Cullens, but I was sure he would be okay with it. If not, he'll get over it, I told her. Okay. She laughed and hugged me once more before running off with the rest of the family. The whole drive back to my house I had a smile on my face and felt that everything for sure was the way it was supposed to be. When I got back to home, I was actually ready for some quiet, but I should have known that wasn't what I was going to get. I caught that delicious scent that I loved so much and smiled as I walked through the house to the living room. I was frozen for a second. I don't know why, but it was nice to see Charlie and Jake watching some sports together. You guys hungry? I asked them as I walked farther into the living room. Sure, Bells, if you wouldn't mind, Charlie replied. Of course I don't. Are you hungry, Jake? There's plenty to make. He turned his head and smiled at me as he stood up. Starved. I'll help, if I can. He laughed as he followed me. Once we were in the kitchen, he surprised me by pinning me to the counter and crushing his lips to mine, completely taking my breath away in the process. He ran his hands along my sides from my hips all the way to my face, not missing a spot. He pulled his lips from my butt only long enough to trail fiery kisses down my jaw and my neck, then back up to my ear. I whimpered softly as his hot breath made me shiver. I missed you, he whispered huskily, followed by a soft nibble of my ear. I've missed you too, I replied, still trying to catch my breath. He pulled back and rested his forehead against mine, staring into my eyes, and he smiled again. Next time you do something that, can you make sure Charlie isn't home? I groaned, trying to break away from his gaze. Maybe, maybe not, he laughed. I sighed and jabbed my finger into his ribs. He winced lightly while still laughing, but released his hold on me. Now let me cook if you're so hungry, I told him as I turned to the fridge to take the chicken. I don't think what I want should be cooked. What do you want then? I looked at him confused and he just laughed as he leaned against the counter. Then it hit me. Oh, Jake. I laughed along with him after I smacked his arm. I couldn't resist. He leaned and kissed me once quickly. Of course you couldn't. Hey, don't play all innocent with me. I seem to remember you. Just yesterday morning, in fact, more than willing to. Shut it, Jake. I laughed nervously. I had no idea when or if Charlie would come walking in. But I didn't want to risk the closeness in the conversation, just in case. All right, he smiled at me and I glanced at him. I couldn't help but smile too. So, how are the Cullens doing? He asked. I could tell he actually cared. Really good actually. They're moving in about a week. Nice. Where to? I glanced at him curiously. They didn't exactly say and I don't think they really know just yet. Possibly New Hampshire. But it's hard to tell. Well, that's cool. Why? I asked, suspiciously. What? I can't just ask. He laughed. Well, for one, I'm sorry, but I'm glad to see them go. 2. They helped us a lot and they're special to you, so I can't help the tiny part in me that actually cares. Well, we had fun today. We played baseball and, I'm not sure when, but I'm going to see them again before they leave. I think maybe tomorrow I'm going shopping with Alice, but that was my own fault. I shook my head and laughed. Shopping? Oh boy. He joked. I'm sure you will have loads of fun. You could always tag along. Yeah, no thanks. I'd probably end up killing her. Shopping with girls is torture, but with a vampire-type girl, yeah, no. I looked at him and smiled. I was a little surprised by how easily he talked about the one family that had disgusted him so much before. While I knew that they would probably never get along fully, I was completely happy with the way it was right then. I looked back at the counter and finished putting the chicken in the pan. Well, I will let you get back to your cooking. Good, 'cause I think I messed up, I told him, the pan that was missing something I couldn't think of. We can't have that, he said as he kissed my temple and walked back to the living room. I sighed happily at the silence and thought about the past few days again. But was instantly startled when I heard them cheering loudly in the living room at the sound of their team scoring. I laughed to myself and went back to preparing the food. Past few weeks have been kind of a blur. It was quiet, calm and relaxing, but I didn't remember much of it. I was starting to think that having everything be over and back to normal was having a weird effect on me. Since I moved to Forks, I had never been able to just sit back and not have to worry about something or someone. It felt unnatural. I had just got home from Emily's where we had a nice little dinner with the pack and family members. It was a bright day, something Forks seemed to have more of recently, and it was a very happy time. Most of the family members didn't know what had been going on. But it was clearly visible to them that something had happened and it was over. We were all able to relax, it was nice. The pack was with their imprints, Charlie was barbecuing with and Billy and Jake was sitting by my side laughing at something stupid Quill had said. I turned my head to see that Emily was waving for me to go into the kitchen. I had volunteered to help make the massive amounts of food for everyone. I leaned over and kissed Jake on the cheek, telling him I would be back, before I stood up to walk over to the house. I stopped halfway as a breeze blew through, scattering my hair across my face. Standing in the middle of the yard, I glanced towards the trees just watching for a moment. Something seemed oddly familiar about the situation. The joining of the family, the movements. The only thing missing was the children and the shadow in the trees. It was very similar to a dream I had had a while back. I sniffed the air cautiously, just in case, but nothing was there. I let out a sigh and smiled. After a minute I felt Jake at my side. What is it, Bells? Nothing, I said, turning to him and smile grew wider. You sure? Yeah, absolutely. I kissed him again before making my way into the house. I helped Emily clean up after dinner. Inside and outside was fully of the loud chatter from the people we cared about. It didn't take long though for people to start clearing out once the sun had started to set. I sat out on the back porch and watched as it faded behind the trees with the breeze blowing gently on my skin. Jake soon came out to see what I was doing and was soon followed by Charlie, who was ready to head home since he had work the next day. I stayed only a few minutes after Charlie had left, making sure the house was back to the way it was before everyone had piled in. I said my goodbyes and walked with Jake out to my truck. The goodbye to him was a tad bit longer, but soon I was so tired I couldn't possibly kiss him any longer. He laughed as I pulled out of the driveway, oddly trying my hardest not to fall asleep at the wheel. It was something I had never had a problem with before. Charlie was already in bed when I had gotten home. I glanced around the house, but couldn't take it anymore. I had to sleep. I was completely exhausted as I walked upstairs towards my bed. My vision was blurring and I wanted so badly to close my eyes. I hadn't done that much, so I wasn't sure what could have been causing the tiredness so strongly. All thoughts of a shower were quickly shoved aside when I reached my bed and plopped down. I stared at the ceiling for all of 1 second before the sleep took over, sucking me down into the blackness. I saw nothing and heard no one, just pitch black. Sparks suddenly flowed through my body and Florida's. He's like lightning passed across the back of my eyelids. It was an odd feeling. My body felt tired, just as it had before I laid down, but I couldn't move. I wasn't even sure I had really fallen asleep yet. I heard the rustling of footsteps in my room and I was startled by it. My body felt strange, different, almost as if it lacked something that I was sure was there before. I listened closely, watching for a voice to match the 2 sets of feet that were pacing in my room. Nothing was spoken, no intakes of breath, just the faint footprints, tapping lightly across the floor with each step. I felt a tightness form in my stomach as my nerves attacked. Who was in my room and why were they there? Finally, I gave in and decided the only way to find out would be to open my eyes. I blinked my lids several times, taking in the dim light from my desk. I took that to mean it was still night and tried to explain to myself that that was why I felt that way. Woken up so quickly after falling asleep. When I turned my head slightly, it was stiff, the kind of feeling you get when you are lying in one spot for far too long. I groaned a little at the slight pain. At the same time, the pacing came to a halt. For both my unknown visitors and I could suddenly feel them on either side of me. I turned to my right more and tried to find their face in the blurriness of my vision. "Who's there?" I called out. "Bella, love, it's just me and Carlisle." His melodic voice was soft and cool in my ear as he spoke so closely. What's going on? Why are you in my room? What time is it?" My voice was rushed as I could feel the panic set in. I tried to sit up, but it was a failed attempt. I felt a cool hand on my left shoulder. "Calm down, Bella. Everything is okay." Carlisle's voice was soothing, but it still left me uneasy. "Can you answer my questions?" I asked as I was getting angry. "You were asleep for a long time, Bella. I am here with the permission of your father to keep an eye on you and it is about 2 o'clock in the morning." He smiled nervously. "I have only been asleep for about 5, maybe 6 hours. What are you talking about?" I tried sitting up again and with the help of Edward, I was able to get halfway up as he helped me lean up against a pillow. My body felt awkward with an intense urge to stretch, but I decided against it. "Bella, you have been asleep for 4 days, Edward told me." His words made no sense. "What, you're playing a joke on me, right?" "No love, we're not." I looked up to meet Edward's eyes and they looked so worried. I reached up slowly and gently stroked his cheek. The texture of his skin felt odd and I thought for sure I was dreaming. "Then this has to be a dream," I told him. "No," I sighed as I pulled my hand from his face. I hadn't had many dreams where things felt so intense. But I didn't know what to make of it. The last time I touched any part of Edward's skin, it was so uncomfortably cold and I could almost feel the toughness in it. Now, it was just cooler than my own. But so different. What the hell was going on? I laid there, staring straight ahead for a while. I had no idea how long the silence stretched out, but their eyes on me I was trying to think it through was irritating. Thoughts came in faster as I started questioning everything. I knew there was one person I wanted. "Where's Jake?" I asked, looking up at Edward. His eyes narrowed slightly. "Jake, why do you ask?" Again, his words confused me. "What do you mean why do I ask?" "He is probably back at home. He hasn't been here since the first day." "Why?" I thought more to myself, wondering why he wasn't the one by my side waiting for me to wake. I understood Carlisle. He was a doctor and as much as I cared about Edward, Jake should have been there. "Bella, what are you thinking?" Edward whispered as he dropped to his knees to look at me closer. "I'm wondering what is going on and why Jake isn't here. Nothing is making sense. Not that I don't mind you being here, but me sleeping for 4 days. It feels like just a few hours since I left La Push, not 4 days." "Left La Push, Carlisle." Edward looked even more worried and confused than before as he looked up at the doctor. It was starting to make the panic worse. Bella dear, what is the last thing you remember? Carlyle spoke gently. Worry was clear in his voice. Being in La Push with Jake and the rest of the pack. I was cooking with Emily for them and family members. We were all enjoying being able to relax with everyone since everything happened. I looked back at Edward. He was looking down, brows furrowed in confusion. I looked back up at Carlyle and his hand rested on his chin as he seemed to be deep in thought. What's going on? What was everything you say that happened? Carlyle asked. The fight with the Volturi. Quote, they exchanged a glance before both looking at me. I looked back and forth between the two. My heartbeat was pounding heavily in my chest. They were looking at me as though I was crazy. Do you really think so? Edward answered Carlyle's unspoken question. Will you please tell me what is going on? It seems as though she don't remember anything. Maybe yes. He was dreaming while unconscious and she believes it to be real. Dreaming. Whoa, seriously guys, what are you talking about? Bella, you need to tell us exactly what happened. Everything with Jake and the Volturi. Carlyle's voice turned serious. But you were all there, why would I need to tell you? I know I messed up with the way I handled things after the newborn fight, but I apologized. I thought it was fixed. At least somewhat. I wasn't sure how that applied. For some reason I was sure they were mad at me after all. How that ended up with me being in my bed and them telling me I was unconscious for 4 days was beyond me, but everything was so confusing. It was the only thing I could think of. So you remember the newborn fight? Edward asked cautiously. Yes. They exchanged glances again. Please tell me what is going on. I will tell you as soon as I know, but for right now, I need you to tell me everything you remember from right before the newborn fight. Start with arriving at the tent in the snow. Carlyle slowly sat on the edge of my bed looking at me intently. All right, though I'm not sure how it will help, I will tell you everything. I took a deep breath and started from the moment I arrived at the tent with Jake. I felt nervous about saying it out loud. For some reason, thanks to their reactions since I opened my eyes, I was completely unsure of anything. Thoughts and questions filled my head. Was it really all a dream? Was I going crazy? Were they lying to me? Did I hit my head and lose my memory? I couldn't think of anything that made any of it seem clear. As I looked back to the past however many weeks it had been since the newborn fight, I realized how hazy it all had been. Some words, thoughts and actions weren't completely clear to me and that worried me a little more. When I got to the part about the kiss with Jake, Carlyle and Edward looked at each other with confusion. The looks deepened as I moved on with the story. When I got to the parts about leaving to go see Jake, I could see the slight pain in Edward's eyes that I had not thought to check on him, or even talk to him after the fight. I, once again, had no clue what to make of their reactions towards any of it. As I moved farther into the story, I was actually scared to tell them the part of the legends, but there was no holding back when I got to the part about phasing and attacking Edward. There was something in his eyes at that point that looked like a bit of humor, but it was quickly gone once the shock and pain returned. The sound of the words I spoke of almost killing him sounded foreign to me, leading me to believe more and more that I might not have been real. I couldn't believe that something I was so sure of could have possibly been a dream. Thinking of it that way alone as a possibility was hard, but thinking that it could be real actually hurt. Could I actually have dreamed of a reality where I had imprinted on Jake because of a legend and became a werewolf? I laughed at the thought, but quickly stopped when I realized I had stopped talking and continued with the part of figuring out the Volturi were coming because of some dream I had reminded me of their promise. I watched as their expressions changed with everything part of the story. The shock, worry, sadness and confusion were very plainly seen. There was no masking it, nor did they even try. I supposed they were too focused on my words to pay attention to how they looked. I kept my eyes focused on the blanket at my feet. I knew their expression would affect my story and I probably wouldn't be able to finish. But I soon learned I needed to finish. I needed to know what happened just as badly as they did, if not more. I feared that my sanity was truly at risk there. I could hear tick on Carlyle's watch as I spoke of the events that may or may not have taken place in the last few weeks. The only other noise in the room was my voice as they stared silently at me, watching my every move and focusing on my every word. As I grew closer the end of the battle, I felt slightly nauseous. The looks on their faces said the truth, the truth I suddenly feared more than anything. It never really happened. I finished up the story, going up to the point when I had come home and gone straight to bed. I told them of how tired I was and collapsed into my bed, after barely making it up the stairs. I also mentioned how those last few days had gone by in a blur and now everything felt that way. Carlyle nodded his head as I told him that was when I woke up here. That makes sense, he said. Your body was trying to wake you up, so in your dream, you were suddenly weak. That's the only way I can think of explaining it. It was taking you out of that strange world your mind created. It would also explain why you were so exhausted now. That took a lot out of you. I felt my chest tighten and my throat thicken as tears filled my eyes. So none of that was real. I looked between Carlyle and Edward quickly. No dear, I'm afraid not, Carlyle told me as he gently took my hand, startling me. What if this is a dream? If that could have so easily been a dream, then why can't this? It feels as equally real as the other. It makes no sense. Why in the hell would I dream something like that? From the little I know of dreams, it could mean several things. I know a bit about the relationship between you and Jacob Black, and maybe your dream was allowing you to explore other options. Why you went in such great detail on the supernatural terms of the dream is a bit odd, but has me very curious. I will have to look into it more to give you a better detail on it. In my opinion though, combining the two, maybe it means that, being surrounded by us mythical creatures has taken more of a toll on you than you knew. Either direction you chose, rather it be Jacob or Edward, you would remain human in age, at least based on decisions, while neither of them would. Jacob could if he chose. But I think you know that would have been a bit difficult for him, given the true nature of who and what he is. So that being said, perhaps your imagination found a way to make you a werewolf to explore options of you choosing him and truly being equal. I know that is something you think about often. Being equal with the ones you love, but making the correct choice. It's only natural for you to wonder what a life in the other direction could be like. Just like I'm sure that Edward has thought about what his life would be like if he had never met you. I know it would be a very boring one for us all. He paused to laugh for a moment and Edward just shook his head. It is natural to be curious and there is nothing wrong with it. To imagine it so vividly, Carlyle. What's normal about that? To imagine being in love, being happy and living a whole different life with another. That is normal. To wake up from being unconscious to being disappointed and sad that life is gone is normal. I couldn't stop the tears that rolled down my cheek as I silent cried and wondered what the hell was wrong with me. It isn't normal to be so confused about either direction in life. If it is, then I wish I could just back to not being normal and have the direction be clear to me. It doesn't work that way, Bella. But it doesn't make hurting the ones I love and care about right either. I took a deep breath trying to calm myself, but one look at Edward ruined whatever resolve I had. What does that mean though? Does this change how I feel? Now I can't feel anything but anger and confusion. I hate this. I buried my face in my hands and cried harder than before. Bella, it takes time. I promise. No one will judge you on your decision, either one that may be. You can take all the time you need. I don't have time, Carlyle. You have as much time as you are willing to give yourself, Edward Said, speaking for the first time since I had finished telling the story. I sat back with my arms folded across my chest and looked down at my arms. Why did it happen like this? Could I really believe that it was all a dream? My heart broke at the thought of it not being real. Not because of the dream itself, but actually breaking half, make my confusion stronger. Each new half belonged to two men who did not deserve the girl that I was. The silence was deafening in the room as they each were lost in their own thoughts. I wanted so badly to be alone, but feared it even more. As I stole a glance at Edward, my heart throbbed even more. The sight of him made my blood boil. He was the one I loved first and, from what I had believed, loved the most. Jake, however, was something so much more to me than I had intended. The dream may not have been real. The situation between us may have been made up, but my feelings for him weren't. The more I thought about it, the more I wanted to laugh. Believing that I could have in fact become a wolf was ridiculous. I shook my head at the thought. I realized that in order to face my confusion, I had to see Jake. I had to see if the feelings were in my head, or if they were as strong as they had felt in my dream. I glanced at the clock and it was just turning 6 o'clock. I pushed back the blankets and stretched my legs before I moved them to the side of the bed. "Bella, what are you doing?" Edward asked as I tried to stand. "I need to see Jake." XXX. It took some convincing, but Edward and Carlisle finally let me leave the house after Charlie went to work. I let him believe that I was still asleep. I didn't want to have to explain it to him. I wasn't ready to talk about it yet. It was bad enough that Carlisle felt the need to tell me what it was that caused me to slip into the little coma. Hypothermia sucked, and knowing that Jake had held me the entire time during the battle made it seem like the dream made more sense. I dreamt of him as he held me and I got lost in there somewhere. I pulled up in La Push at 8 in the morning. I wasn't sure if he would be awake, but I couldn't wait any longer. I took the last steps to his door and knocked lightly. I was greeted by a shocked Billy, who apparently thought I was still stuck in sleep. I told him I had woken up a few hours before and I had a few questions for Jake. He was a bit hesitant, but as Jake came walking out of his room, he really had no choice. Jake was more surprised to see me than Billy was. He practically ran across the room and lifted me up into his arms and swung me around, mumbling things I couldn't understand. He set me back down on my feet and I stumbled a little, causing him to laugh. "You're okay." I was so worried, Bells. The smile on his face was bright and contagious. "Yeah, I'm okay. I think anyways." His smile dimmed a little at my words and I hated that I had spoken them. He looked up at me and when I turned away, he lifted my chin up with his finger. What is it? Do you think we could talk?" I scratched my head as I pointed out the door. "I just something on my mind I want to discuss with you." Okay, sure." He told his dad that he would be back and followed me outside. He led me to the pathway that led to the beach and we walked along the shoreline. A blurry flashback to my dream sent a shiver down my spine. I had to remind myself that it was in fact a dream. "Okay, what is it, Bella? What's wrong?" Everything is okay," I assured him, but it didn't remove the unsure look in his eyes. While I was asleep, if you could call it that, I had this crazy, but very realistic dream. It felt so real. When I woke up I was sure that I was dreaming waking up. I shook my head, trying to clear the thoughts so I could speak clearly. "What was the dream?" he asked. "It's pretty crazy, even for me." I laughed as I looked down at the sand. "I want to hear all about it." I took a deep breath and did just as I had with Edward and Carlisle. I started before the newborn fight. Once I was finished, we were sitting on a fallen tree just outside of the forest. He was completely silent as he stared out into the waves, laughing only once, but then returning serious again. I picked at my fingernails, a loose string on my jacket, and chewed on my bottom lip so badly I had actually made it bleed. He looked at me finally, but didn't speak at first. "Seriously?" he asked, with his eyes narrowed. "Yeah," I laughed, wondering why I would make that up. Then I laughed again, realizing that it was all made up. "That is a pretty crazy dream," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. Staring back out at the waves. I sighed. "Yeah, how do you feel about it? I mean, have your feelings changed any?" "Yes, maybe. I'm not sure. I get the same feeling when I look at Edward from before and close to the same feeling when I look at you as I had in the dream. It's kind equal between you two right now. My thoughts are all jumbled up though. Carlisle thinks it was just a way for me to explore my options. Real or not, but I can't really see that." "Yeah, I kind of agree with him, believe it or not, but the imprinting, becoming a wolf and taking on those vampires. It's pretty unreal. Don't get me wrong, if it could actually happen, I would love for it to happen. I would love anything that involved you in my life, Bells, and I would do anything to get you there." He grabbed my hand and brought it to his lips, kissing it gently. I wanted to speak, but I didn't know how. I didn't know what to say, what I was supposed to say. I just stared. "You really think he would handle it that easily if you picked me?" he said with a laugh. I pulled my hand that was still in his away and smacked his arm playfully. "I have no idea. We could find out, you know." I laughed, but stopped when I seen that he was serious. "Jake, I think I need to take some time to figure this out. This makes it harder than before." While I'm sure that I still want Edward, a part of me is telling me that it's not the same anymore. It all makes me realize even more that it wasn't anything more than a dream, the easiness of it. It's so confusing and complicated. My choice isn't so easy now. When before I knew picking him was right, I'm not so sure. Part of me is just telling me to run for the hills and never look back. Maybe that is what you should do. I looked at him, shocked. What? Okay. Maybe not go and never look back, but get away for a while. Take some time for yourself, discover what you want. Bella, I don't want to rush you. As I said before, I would give anything to have you in my life. But not at the chance you would regret it later, or maybe question yourself with what ifs. It has to be well thought out and sure. I thought about that seriously for a moment. Getting away wouldn't be a bad idea. It was freaky to say the least, which is actually funny considering everything I have been through. My dreams have always been vivid. It's what made the nightmares so horrible, but this. It shouldn't have been a surprise really, but it was ridiculous. I knew Jake thought I was crazy. The entire thing was odd, but I think everyone has experienced something like that at one point in their lives. Dreams you think are real, then when you are finally convinced that's what they are, you find out they're not. Maybe I should explain. The whole thing made no sense, but at the same time it did. It was all pretty unreal, but that was just how my life went after moving to this rainy little town. Here is how the rest of it went. I'll fill in the blanks later. I was boarding the plane from Jacksonville. On my way back to Forks. I had a decision to make. One that was obvious to me anyways. I had gone to visit my mom and stayed there about 2 weeks to help clear my mind. It took one of those weeks to decide and an additional week to make sure. I was returning home to him. I was thinking back to the day I decided to leave. Edward was unsure about me going, but gave in agreeing that it was a wise decision and he supported me. He even paid for my trip. Of course I tried to fight it, but it was a pointless battle, so I dealt with it. Charlie was a different case. He feared that I wouldn't return. That something had happened and I was running away from him again. But I assured him that wasn't what was happening and promised to return. My home was in Forks, no matter who I chose to share my life with. He agreed, but I can tell it was only because he didn't want to push me and that he was just happy that I was okay when I woke up. I had really hurt him in the past with all my taking off on him. He was there at the airport to pick me up. His relieved, loving smile was something that made me even happier to be home. Once we pulled up to the house, I was truly happy to be back. I loved my mother, but I was glad every day that I made the decision to move to Forks. No matter how screwed up everything was since the first day at school. I walked straight up the stairs and went into my room and started unpacking my bags. When I finished, I sat at the edge of my bed and stared at the window, the floor, the walls and my bed. Memories floated in my mind as very thing I looked at reminded me of something. The first time Edward had climbed through my window, that first kiss and all the times he stayed the night with me, holding me while I slept. I took a deep breath and smiled at the calmness I felt. I knew I was making the right decision. Only one name, one voice and one face followed with me every day. The one I would be returning home to. I pushed myself off the bed and made my way to the bathroom to look at myself in the mirror to make sure I didn't look too horrible after my flight. I ran the brush through my hair and then ran downstairs, telling Charlie I would be home for dinner. It was in the middle of the afternoon and dark clouds were a nice welcome home, as was the sound of my truck chugging its way slowly down the road to his house. I was confident. I couldn't only hope he would take the news well. Though I was sure I was making the right decision, I still felt horrible. How could I not after fighting the love triangle I had created with two amazing guys? When I made my way to the house finally, he was standing outside waiting for me. I took one glance at him before moving out of my truck. He knew. I walked up to him and he wrapped his arms around me gently. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I reached up and cupped his cheek in my hand and stared into his eyes, memorizing his face. I would always want to remember the times I had shared with him and the ways he made me feel. He would always be special to me. Your mind is set, he whispered into my wrist. Yes. Are you sure? Yes. My voice was softer than before as I watched him close his eyes and simply nod. He removed my hand from his face and kissed it as he held it in both of his. Will you keep in touch? If that's what you want. Believe it or not, I do. I want nothing more than to see how your life will change. His voice was sad, but could tell he had accepted it long before I had arrived. Then I will give you that. How will the others take the news? They will be fine, I promise. Should I say goodbye? They're not home. They left to give us time alone. I nodded as I looked down. I didn't know if I would be able to return or not. I didn't think I was strong enough for that. They will understand, he said. What if I call? They would love that. He smiled at me as he leaned in and kissed my cheek softly. I stayed for a little. Over 15 minutes saying my goodbye. I didn't want to overstay, didn't want to hurt him more than was necessary. When I got back into my truck and drove away, I didn't try to hold back the tears that fell. The last words he spoke floated around in my head as I smiled. Be happy, Bella. Live a long and happy life. I am always here if you need me. The words were familiar, making it odd once again that it had all been a dream. I would miss him, all of them, so much, but what I was doing was right. I knew that more than anything else. It was about 3 when I arrived at my next destination. The one I had been anxious to arrive at since I boarded the plane in Jacksonville. He too was waiting for me outside. My old beat-up truck never failed to announce my arrival. I didn't waste any time getting out of the truck as I ran up into his waiting arms. Is this good? He asked, hope filling his voice. I nodded at him as I leaned in to kiss him. When I pulled away he spoke again. You're sure? More than anything. He picked me up, gripping me tightly and kissed me harder than before. How will you? What if? Damn. I laughed. What? Honestly, though I hoped, I didn't expect this. Oh Jake, you should really be more confident in yourself. I laughed again. It's just that, I don't know. How will he take it? He took it fine. You told him already. I just left there. He already knew. Whoa, really? Yes. The happiness in his eyes made my heart melt. It made me feel whole again. My heart was no longer broken, but healed and swelled with the love I had for Jake. I had thought about my choice entirely too much when I first arrived to Jacksonville, and once I finally stopped and just let myself enjoy my time with Renee, the one that always came to mind was Jake. That was what finally let me know. I didn't look too much into the dream. That wasn't what I allowed to make my decision, partially because I was still having hard time believing it. The dream just helped me realize what my other option was, wrong as it was, but still the same. I found myself questioning if I really wanted eternity with Edward more than the question of did I really love Jacob enough. The answer was as plain as anything, I did. Edward did handle it better than I had planned, but I had to admit I was hoping Alice's visions would help me a little. If my future was gone, then they knew what that meant. I made sure that I said my goodbyes to Edward better than I had in the dream. That really was the one regret I had in it, and I wanted to make sure that wasn't what I regretted in reality. I regretted nothing. I was truly happy with the way things turned out. The rest of the day with Jake was spent basically enjoying my return with him, watching movies and being close. Once I arrived back home, cooked and cleaned up dinner, I decided that I would call the Cullen house as I had told Edward the first would. I talked to everyone individually. They were all sad to hear the news, but happy that I would still keep in touch. I made plans to visit them after they got settled into their new home, which they would be headed to soon. It was a good phone call and sad. I would miss them all so very much. As I walked upstairs to my bedroom to go to sleep, I laid down in my bed and stared at my ceiling. I thought of everything and how things turned out. I thought about the past, the present and the future. I looked forward to sharing my life with Jake and everything that came along with it. I didn't fantasize about plans and events that could take place. I just wanted to live and let things happen. As for Jake's phasing, he decided that he would stick to it for a little while longer. He wasn't sure if it was safe enough to stop yet, and I was okay with that. It would be a while before I got to looking too much older than him, and he needed to do his job for the tribe. It was one of those things that I would deal with when the time came. For right then, I was satisfied with the way things were. Lost in thoughts, I started falling asleep when I heard a tapping on my window. Curiously, I got up and walked over and opened it, smiling as I slowly backed up to let my visitor in. Jake, what are you doing here? I laughed quietly. I just wanted to say goodnight. He pulled me into his arms and I held onto him, my arms wrapping around him as tight as I could. His scent, and his warmth relaxing me completely and grew even more tired than before. Can I stay for a while? He asked, nervously as he pulled back a little. Sure, as cheesy as it sounds, I just wanted to hold you for a while. He laughed as he led me over to my bed. I smiled at him as he pulled my blankets back farther for me to get in. Once I was lying down, he tucked the blankets in on one side and walked over to get in on the other side. He pulled me close and I rested my head on his chest as I closed my eyes and let out a sigh in comfort. I love this, I said, snuggling deeper into him. I could feel, rather than hear, his laugh as it vibrated through his body. And I love you. His voice was suddenly serious and I could feel his eyes on the back of my head. I looked up at him, gazing into his eyes, and I could see the love in them as always. I smiled and leaned into to kiss him softly, but quickly before pressing my face back into his shirtless chest. I love you, too. I could feel him relax under me and I hadn't realized that he was even tense. You know, I was thinking about something before you came home. Then I thought about it again before I came here tonight. What? I yawned. The whole imprinting thing. My body froze, even holding my breath. Imprinting. That was not something I hadn't really thought about, well, not in the sense that it didn't involve me anyways. What if, maybe we could be, he continued, and I let out a gust of air. Really? How? I mean, I'm not sure how all that works exactly, but doesn't it happen when you see the person right after you phase? Well, usually yeah, but what if your imprint in someone you've known all your life and have always loved? How would you know the difference? What do you mean? When I hear about the guys and their imprints, I think of you. I feel the same. It hurts to be away from you in my world as you. I smiled at his words. If that were the case, it would be nice to not have to worry about the possibility of losing him in the future. It is impossible to put into words the way I feel and have always felt about you. The pack doesn't quite agree, but they also admit they could be wrong. They of course know how I feel, they see it in my mind. They agree to the similarities. It is one thing I have never had to question, not since I was young. I have always been in love with you, Bella. No one could change that. I felt a tear roll down my cheek and fall onto his chest. He wrapped both arms around me and tightened them, pulling me closer into him. I had trouble breathing, but not because he was crushing me, but because of his words. The way he felt, I felt it. My heart throbbed in my chest as I tried to find the words to say, but my voice wouldn't work. Not that I was sure of what to say anyways. He loosened his grip on me a little and kissed the top of my head. I don't expect you to say anything, Bells. I just wanted to get that off my mind. I nodded my head. He reached one hand to my face as he wiped away the remaining tears. I love you, Jake, I said into his chest. It was the only thing I could say. Nothing can change that either. He slowly stroked the back of my head, while his their arm remained wrapped around me tightly. It didn't take long for me to fall to sleep. And here is where the bigger twist comes in. I fucking woke up. Again. Everything was different. Again. But yet, it was the same. When morning came, I opened my eyes expecting Jake to be by my side, which he was, but not the way I had thought he'd be. My breathing was heavy, my eyes bugging out of my head, and I was still so very tired. My first thought was, what the hell is wrong with me? I flew up into a sitting position, eyes flying all over my room, which was different in a way. I just couldn't place how. I turned to my right to see Jake sitting on the edge of my bed, with a t-shirt and jeans on. Just as wide-eyed as I felt I was. Bells, honey, are you okay? He asked, trying not to laugh. I could only imagine how I had looked. What is today? I asked him, rubbing my palms into my face. September 13th. I ran the day through my brain, trying to figure out if the day matched any of the days in my dream, and only ended up hurting myself when I rubbed my eyes a little too hard. Are you sure you're okay? Yeah. No, I'm not. What's wrong? You seemed like you were having a bad dream. Horrible dream, I think. Damn it, Bella. What happened yesterday? What do you mean? We had dinner at Sam and M's. You came home early because you were tired. What's going on? Dinner at Sam and Emily's. Yes. His face was expressionless, but his eyes were wide with panic. I looked down at myself, pulling the blanket off of me and stood up. I twirled a little, checking myself. Jake laughed, but it was nervous sounding. I ran into the bathroom and looked into the mirror. I was a little bigger than I was. I flexed my arm and there were actual visible muscles. My hair was long as always, pulled up into a messy ponytail. My clothing clung to my body. I made another turn, looking at my backside before I went into the bedroom with only one thought. I look the same as I had before. Bella, you wanna tell me what's going on in that beautiful head of yours? We fought the Volturi. Yeah, it was little over a month ago. The Cullens are gone. Yes. What the fuck? Bella. I plopped down onto my bed next to Jake and leaned my head against his chest. I couldn't be sure what was real and what wasn't. I once again cursed my poor, but vivid imagination. Could I have dreamt that it was all a dream, when it was in fact not? I laughed at the thought. Bella, you're kind scaring me. Join the club. I looked up at him to see him staring at me. He must have thought I'd finally lost it. I shook my head, still laughing. I just had one crazy, but very realistic dream. What was it about? I dreamt that I woke up and Carlisle and Edward were in my room. They were telling me that I had basically gone into a coma during the newborn fight. You couldn't save me from the hypothermia and I got lost in my mind. I had dreamed the imprinting, the becoming a wolf and the fight with the Volturi. Not only that, but that I had to make a decision between you and Edward again. I took a trip to Jacksonville to visit my mom to clear my head, your idea, and came back to tell you decision. Jake started at me, wide-eyed again and trying to laugh. Who'd you chose? He asked instantly. You of course, but still. The whole damn thing was a dream. It felt so real. I had finally been convinced that our life now was a dream and then now I see that that was a dream. God, I hope this isn't a dream. That might officially put me in the loony bin. I laughed. I was very confused still. That real, huh? Yeah. I could feel everything and it was all so bright and just so real. No other way to explain it besides it just felt real. Damn. That is crazy. Tell me about it. I sighed and leaned back into him. Well, I can tell you that all of this, is definitely real. Well, I sure hope so. Got any plans for the day? He asked, with a tone I couldn't place. When I looked up at him he tried to hide his smile, but failed. Nope. I don't remember if I did or not actually. I'm still kind of stunned over that dream. Why? What do you have planned? He just laughed. What are you up to? Why did you ask me the date? To see if it fit either of the dates that I was thinking of. My dream was back in like June. What? You have no idea what today is? Yeah, you told me. September 30. Oh shit. He laughed harder. I have never met someone who could forget their birthday so easily. I usually hate my birthdays, so it's easy really. Unless I have someone annoyingly planning a party for me. Then it's kind of hard to forget. Jake, why are you looking at me like that? What do you have planned? I stood up and looked at him with my arms folded across my chest. He just continued to laugh. Take a shower and get dressed. Why? Just do it. I have to head back home, but when you're done, call Leah. Jake. I whined. Wait, Leah, yeah, she said something about talking to you. I don't know. Okay, alright, I'll see you soon, okay. Sure. My head was spinning. First the dream, now something involving Leah. Not to mention it was my birthday and Jake was up to something. I glanced at my bed wondering if I could get away with just sleeping all day. Jake caught me and laughed. Don't even think about it. I groaned as I walked over to my dresser to pull out a pair of clothes. Thanks to Alice's help, I had plenty. Jake met me as I stood straight again and kissed me. Love you. I love you too, even though you're a pain in my ass. He laughed and walked towards out my bedroom then yelled, Happy birthday, just before he made it down the stairs. I slammed my dresser drawer shut, hearing a crack-ing noise before making a growling sound as I headed towards the bathroom to get ready for the day from hell known as my birthday. Once in the shower, I let myself think more. The realness of it all was mind-boggling. I got a headache within the first minute of trying to make sense of it all. It was a dream. I dreamt that my life of imprinting and becoming a werewolf was a dream. Putting it into words was hard. Making sense of it inside my mess of a brain was even harder. I was just relieved that this life was real. Except for the birthday part. Too bad I couldn't just dream this day away, I thought. I let the extremely hot water wash away the stress that waking in a panic always caused. It was my 19th birthday and would be spending the day with Jake. And Leah. I sighed, trying to convince myself that the day wouldn't be miserable was useless. I thought of what Leah could want. Sure, we got along, but it was still odd. The only connection we really had was being female werewolves and dealing with the issues that came along. I couldn't think of one thing that she could want to talk to me about and why she had Jake tell me to call her. The water ran cold and stopped me from thinking on it anymore. I would just have to call her and find out. Once I towel dried and got dressed, I blow dried my hair to straighten it some. I wore my normal style of clothing, which was actually a surprise since Alice never let me wear just jeans and t-shirts. I had actually won a fight with her for once. I thought though that maybe she was just giving in to me because they were leaving, but I was still happy that it was what I wanted. I did though let her pick out some fancier clothes. Who knows if an occasion would come up. I laughed at the memory. Once I was dressed and downstairs, I paced the kitchen, stalling my phone call. I kept looking at the clock. It was almost 1 in the afternoon. I couldn't believe that I had slept so late. When 2 minutes felt like an hour, I finally gave in and picked up the receiver. Dialing the number Jake had written on a piece of paper and left on the counter. It rang only twice before she answered. Hello. Hey, Leah. It's Bella. Jake said you wanted to talk to me. Oh, hey, yeah, are you busy? No, you think I could come over? There was something I wanted to talk about. Sure, what's up? I'll tell you when I get there. I'm leaving right now. Okay. And she hung up. It was weird. I had no more information than I had in the shower. She wanted to talk. I decided to make myself something to eat while I was waiting. Just as I sat down at the table to eat my sandwich, I heard a car pull into the driveway. I got up and opened the front door just as she was walking up. Hey, she said with a smile. I raised a brow at her. Her actions were confusing me even more. Hi, come in. So, happy birthday. Jake said I shouldn't mention it, but when do I ever listen to him? She laughed. Yeah, thanks. I was just getting ready to eat. Would you like something? I asked. She was making me nervous. No thanks, I ate just before you called. We walked into the kitchen and I sat back down at the table as she sat across from me. So what did you want to talk about? I asked. Well, she suddenly looked nervous. It didn't help me any. I was wondering, how much longer were you and Jake planning on continuing phasing? I'm not sure. We haven't talked about much. Why? I was just curious. Not that I don't mind the company, but why didn't you just ask me that later? I'm sure I'll be on the res at some point today, I usually am. Yeah, I know. Just so many nosy boys around. Is there more to the question? Not really. Right. It was odd. I couldn't think of anything else to say. Her odd question truly baffled me. Well, it was just curious about your theory. You know, with us in the phasing. I was curious because you're imprinted and in love and all that junk. Me, well, I don't plan on ever finding anyone that the option might come up. And honestly, I don't really want to risk taking the chance just to find out I can't. The having children thing, yeah, well, I don't know. I haven't thought about it much. I don't really plan on having kids anytime soon, so even if I was to stop phasing and go back to normal, I wouldn't really want to put that theory to test right away. Know what I mean? Yeah, I get that. It was just a thought of mine that brought a question. I don't mean to pry into your business. I don't mind knowing how you have felt about the whole thing. I would expect you to still be curious. I wonder if there's a time limit on the whole thing. Like, you have to stop phasing in a certain amount of time or your body will be stuck that way. I laughed. Leah, I don't think it works like that. At least I hope not anyways. Yeah, that would suck. Well anyways, I don't want to take up any more of your time. She looked away and I could tell there was something else. Suddenly something else clicked into place. Leah, yeah, she asked as her head snapped back into my direction. Jake had you come and distract me, didn't he? She laughed nervously and started fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. I stood up, pushing the chair back. I didn't know whether to laugh or be mad. Ugh, that sneaky little Bella. You know I'm not really into all this kind of crap and definitely not usually up to helping him with anything really. He's trying to keep it light, but just wants the day to be special for you. He's been trying to plan something perfect for you. I looked at her and I have no idea what she could see on my face, but I was shocked and confused. Are you okay? Yes. Why? You're helping him. You're putting up with Jake to help me. Not only that, but you are defending him. Okay, so that does sound a little crazy. A little. I laughed as I put my plate in the sink and stood behind my chair. Okay, so a lot. Believe it or not, I've come to actually like you. You turned out to not be such a bad person. Not to mention you gave me some hope on something I had given up and now I don't see it as such a curse. She paused for a moment before continuing. I actually see you as a friend. Really? I asked, shocked once again. Yeah, I don't like many girls, never really have, but you're not like other girls. I can't really talk to the friends I did have, and you remind me of them. Well, thank you. Yeah, but don't expect me to be all warm and fuzzy. This was as close as I can come to it without being nauseated. We both laughed as walked into the living room. She told me about how she has actually gotten over the situation with Sam a little more and doesn't want to torture him anymore like she was before. She said she isn't ready to move on and find someone because she doesn't want to hurt them like she was hurt, but she won't be phasing forever and that thought left open options. For once since the breakup with Sam, she is finally content with her life. It was nice to see her smile. We decided to watch something on TV while we waited for the call from Jake. We laughed at the stupid Omen on the reality show and talked about how thankful we were that our lives weren't that bad. We both agreed that fighting vampires was better than the overly dramatic lives they created for themselves. It was nice and we had more in common than we had thought. Finally Jake's all came and I was nervous about heading to La Push for once. More nervous than that time on the beach. This time I knew he was planning something. The rid with Leah was silent and I could tell she was trying her hardest not to laugh at me. When we pulled up on the res, Embry was standing outside of Jake's house. He started smiling when he saw me. So I heard you had a crazy ass dream last night, he said with a laugh as I got out of the car. Yeah, shut up. I punched him in the arm and he winced. I just think it finally confirms you're crazy. Yeah, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Do you really want to find out? I asked, glaring at him. No, not really. He laughed as he took off running. That's what I thought, I yelled. Knowing he could hear me even thought I couldn't see him anymore. I turned back towards Leah and stuck my head through the window. So thanks for coming over and for the ride. My voice was full of my nervousness as I glanced at the clock at her dashboard. It was just past 4 p.m. No problem. Have fun. She laughed and pulled out of the driveway. I took a deep breath as I walked up to Jake's house. I was just reaching my hand up to knock when he opened the door. You don't have to knock, you know, he said with a smile before hugging me. Okay, I mumbled. You're nervous. He laughed as he hugged me tighter. I never know what to expect with you anymore. Is that good or bad? He asked, pulling back a little. I don't really know. He grabbed my hand and pulled me into the house. 2 steps in and my nose was assaulted with something coming from the kitchen. I looked at him curiously as he smiled again. I know you don't like anything big, or surprises, so I picked something in between. I cooked you dinner. You what? Don't seem so surprised. I shook my head at him. He led me to the kitchen table and I could feel my eyes widen as my mouth dropped. The room was darker than normal for daytime. The table had a dark red tablecloth, with a small bouquet of beautiful flowers in the middle. 2 candlesticks were lit, on each side of the flowers. There were 2 plates on each side of the table, with forks on each side on top of napkins. There were glasses on the other sides of the plates with a bottle of what looked like wine sitting next to it. The CD player from the beach was sitting on the kitchen counter, playing a beautiful melody that flowed through the air softly. I looked further into the kitchen and saw that the counter had a couple of bowls and dishes of food on it. The stove was full of pans and I could see something that looked like sauce splashed on it. Whatever he had cooked smelt amazing. I felt a tugging on my hand and I realized I had frozen in place at the sight of it all. I looked back up at him and his expression was almost worried. I was about to speak, but he brought a finger up to my mouth for me to stop. I did a S he wanted and he pulled me over to the table. He pulled out my chair and I sat down as he helped me scoot the chair forward a little. He walked to the counter and came back with a basket of breadsticks. "I hope you're hungry," he said. Yes. I couldn't form any other words. The day seemed to be one shock after another. He just smiled as he moved into the kitchen and came back with a bowl and a spoon. He slowly dished out some spaghetti onto my plate. It actually looked as good as it smelt, which once again was amazing. He caught me eyeing it. "Hope this is okay." He was easy enough for me to make. He laughed. "As I'm sure you know I'm not as great as cook as you are, so I hope you will enjoy this." "Well, if it tastes as good as it smells, we'll have no problems." I reached up and grabbed his shirt at the chest and pulled him down so I could kiss him. He almost dropped the bowl of food, so one let him go and couldn't hold in the giggle. He walked over and scooped some onto his plate. Tay then put the bowl back into the kitchen and came back. He picked up the bottle of wine, which was already open, and poured some into my glass. "Wine?" I asked. Though I wasn't a drinker, I had had wine once or twice with Renee. I was sort of shocked to see him with a bottle. "Emily recommended it." He shrugged. I nodded my head and picked up the glass once he was done and took a sip. It was actually good, with a nice sweet taste to it. He poured himself a glass and then sat down. I could feel his eyes on me as I looked down at the plate of food. My stomach growled as I took one's last smell of it. I picked up my fork and slowly swirled some of the noodles on it and took a bit. I was completely shocked that it actually tasted good. "You really gotta start giving him some more credit," I told myself. "Oh wow, Jake. This tastes amazing. All of this is amazing." "Really? So you're not mad?" "No. I couldn't be even if I wanted to. It's really sweet. I'm glad you like it. I just want Ed to show you that not all birthdays are bad and that there are ways of celebrating that aren't too extreme." "Thank you." The rest of dinner had light conversation. We talked a little bit about my conversation with Leah, which he was surprised to hear about just as much as I was when I heard her say the words. We talked a little bit about how he came up with the idea for dinner. By the time we were almost done, I could tell there was something else still on his mind. He was still acting nervous. I waited until the food was gone and I had finished all of my glass of wine before I mentioned it. "Jake, are you okay? You seem a little nervous about something." "I promise that all of this is fine." "Oh, yeah, I'm fine." "Great actually. Then loosen up a little." I smiled as I tried to stand up, but he stopped me. "Here, I'll get it." He stood up and reached for my plate, his hand was shaking. Once the table was cleared from our meal, he brought back 2 other plates that looked to have something brown on them. Cake. When he set the plates down, he poured me another glass of wine, along with himself. After he sat down, he chugged the whole glass at once. "Great my ass. This looks really good. Did you make this?" I asked, though I was sure he hadn't. Spaghetti was one thing, but I wasn't so sure about dessert. Emily did. I wasn't about to attempt baking." He laughed, more nervous than before. When the cake was finished, he got up and cleared those plates as well. His nervousness was making my body tense. I couldn't quite figure out what was wrong with him, but it had to be something big. Obviously he wasn't going to tell me yet, so I didn't push it. It took all of my patience. I drank more of the wine to help calm myself. He came back from the kitchen and reached a shaky hand out to me. I grabbed it and he pulled me out of my chair. At first I was wondering if he was going to make me dance again to the still playing music, but he didn't. Instead he just held me for a while. I couldn't take it anymore. "Jake, you are definitely not okay." "Yeah, you can tell me, what's wrong?" "I think I'm just overthinking something. Trying to make this night perfect without ruining it." "What are you talking about? Everything is perfect." Well yes, it is." He leaned, looked into my eyes before kissed me softly while holding each side of my face. He pulled away slowly. "You are perfect, if you say so," I said with an embarrassing snort. "Way to prove a point." I rolled my eyes. "I know so." I moved away from me a little, dropping his hands from my face. He moved to go towards the living room, but stopped and turned the other way, then stopped again. Jake, you're starting to worry me a little." "Oh, it's nothing, Bells." "Obviously it is." He took a deep breath and let it out heavily. Well, damn it." He reached into his pocket and fiddled with something for a moment as he looked deep in thought. He brought his hand back out while holding a little tiny velvet box. I eyed it curiously before he tightened his fist around it, making a groaning sound. I wanted to do this differently, perfectly, but I lacked some serious creativity. My heart thudded in my chest. Jake, what are you talking about?" "What is that?" "Bells, you know I love you more than anything and I know you feel the same. I want to make everything perfect for you. You deserve it. You deserve more than I can ever give you, but somehow, someway, we were meant for each other. I have never felt luckier than I do when I have you by my side. I feel the same for you. Like you said, you know that." I tried to say more, but my throat closed up and I couldn't get the words out. I had a pretty good feeling what was going on and why he was so nervous. I hadn't put too much though into it. The only other time it came up, well, I didn't want to think about that. I know, Bells, and that's why I wanted to do this. It don't have to be any time soon, you don't even have to answer me. But the more I think about it, the more I want this. I love you and I want everyone else, outside our families, to know it too." He unclenched the box and held it out in his hand in front of me. I looked at it and looked back at him, eyes bouncing back and forth. His other head reached out and opened it. Inside was probably the most beautiful ring I had ever seen. It was silver with a single diamond in the middle. It had a spiral pattern engraved on it that went around the diamond, going all the way around the thin band. It was simple, yet absolutely beautiful. Oh my, I know it's not much, it was my mom's. Someday I will be able to get you your own, but... Jacob, it is perfect. I just stared at it, not moving and barely breathing. Even though I hadn't really thought about marrying Jake, though I knew it would happen someday. I immediately knew my answer. Like I could really say no to him. Really? Yes, definitely. So, yes. We both laughed at my response. I didn't need to hear what he had to say next. Either way it would be the same answer. He removed the ring from its box, mumbling something about the size, which I wasn't listening to, and set the box down on the table. I stuck out my hand, which was shaking just as much as his was. He grabbed my hand and slowly slipped on the ring, which was a perfect fit. Before he even had a chance to move his hand, I threw my arms around him and slammed my lips against his, almost knocking him over. He lifted me up and I wrapped my legs around his waist as he squeezed his arms around me tighter. The kiss deepened, filled with need, want, and the most powerful of all, our love. The day had gone from one hell of a crazy afternoon to one amazing night. I had more happiness filled in me than I could ever have imagined and could ever be able to explain. All the bad was behind us, though I'm sure there could be more. I didn't think about that. I just couldn't wait to start a new future with Jake. Complications would be expected with our kind of life. I would take it all with him by my side. He was my strength, my everything. With him, anything was possible. The night continued on that like, all thoughts of anything besides Jake and I were completely gone. It was the best and most memorable birthday I would ever have. And let's just say the memories didn't stop at the ring. Charlie was thrilled with our engagement tea. He next day, and I was excited to hear about his newly formed relationship with Sue in return. Even Renee was happy for us, though she just didn't get the hows and whys that it was so soon. Jake and I decided we would go on taking everything one step at a time. No rushing and no over-planning. We would continue to phase as long as we felt the need to, and someday we would give a shot in Leah and I's theory. But for the time being, everything was more perfect than I could have ever imagined. When I think about it now, going over the events that had happened since I moved to Forks, I realized just how much I have learned since that first day. But the most important thing was nothing is impossible. The end, and thanks for watching. Subscribe our channel for more.